Chapter 24:17. Just as Big Yellow was about to react, Lin soon gave him a look to stop him. When the two of them followed, they used a stealth technique. With Big Yellow's strength, ordinary Emperor stage cultivators wouldn't be able to detect their existence at all. Sure enough, after the group of figures arrived on the ancient starry sky path, they hurriedly flashed into the distance. At the same time, the Absolute Movement Martial Emperor, Battle Emperor Hun Tong, and Red Rainbow Sword Emperor stopped and turned their heads. So its fellow cultivators from the Panwu Dao court. The Absolute Movement Martial Emperor recognized the origins of that group at a glance, and his expression instantly relaxed. A smile appeared on his face as he chatted with them. Not long after, the Emperor stage cultivators from the two ancient Dao courts met up and moved forward together. Lin Sun and Big Yellow looked at each other after witnessing this scene in the dark, and they relaxed before following them again. The ancient starry Han path was long and winding, and it was impossible to teleport. After an entire 6 hours, an incomparably enormous nebula vortex appeared in the void, and it was like a bloody mouth that had opened in the universe. The Absolute Movement Martial Emperor and the Panwu Dao Court's Emperor stage cultivators rushed in one after another. "Let's go." Big Yellow led the way and charged over with Lin Sun. At the end of the nebula vortex was the secret realm where the flying immortal river was. At that time, as long as they followed the flying immortal river, they would be able to enter the Kunlun ruins. Buzz. After entering the nebula vortex, Lin Sun and Big Yellow instantly arrived in a world that was filled with chaotic chi and radiance. The heavens and the earth were boundless. A thunderous roar of water could be heard from afar, and a heavenly river could be seen hanging upside down on the horizon in the far distance. The mighty river seemed to have come from the sky, and it was a spectacular sight. However, when Big Yellow and Lin Sun appeared, they were stunned. They saw that their surroundings had already been surrounded by figures, and they seemed to be waiting for a rabbit to come to them. They had sealed off this area. These figures were the Absolute Movement Martial Emperor's group and the Panwu Dao Court's group. They'd been discovered. Lin Sun and Big Yellow immediately realized their situation, and they couldn't help but be surprised. Soon after, they calmed down, removed the secret technique to conceal their auras, and revealed themselves. When the three martial emperors saw their appearances, they revealed looks of disbelief. "So, the ones who were tracking us are you?" Instantly, their eyes became bright and burning. Originally, they felt it was a pity that they'd missed such a great fortuitous encounter, but who would have imagined that it would actually come knocking on their door? "Do you recognize this man and dog?" On the side of the Panwu Dao court, there were 5 martial emperors. The one in the lead was a black-haired old man in a black robe. He had a dignified bearing and his body was surrounded by strands of terrifying silver lightning. In his hand was a copper mirror that was inscribed with profound markings of the Tao. Battle Emperor Jingya. He was one of the elders of the Panwu Imperial Court, an 8th-level Emperor realm expert. Previously, it was with the copper mirror in his hand that he saw through Lin Sun and Goldie, who had been secretly tracking Martial Emperor's group. However, Battle Emperor Jingya was worried about alerting the enemy at that time, so he pretended not to know anything. Only when he met up with the Absolute Movement Martial Emperor and the others did he transmit the news. Thus, the group of martial emperors decided to set up an ambush at the entrance of the secret realm and capture the pursuers in one fell swoop. "Of course I recognize him. If I'm not wrong, this child is the famous Dao Yuan Emperor, or should I say, the remnant of Mount Fangsuan." The Absolute Movement Martial Emperor didn't hide anything and locked his eyes on Lin Sun. "Dao Yuan Emperor." Battle Emperor Jingya and the others were agitated. They all showed strange expressions and looked at Lin Sun in a different light. It seemed that they had never expected that they would catch such a big fish while waiting for the hare to come. Suddenly, Goldie snorted with dissatisfaction. He, the great Battle Emperor Shao, was right in front of them, but everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Sun and ignored him. Hearing this snort, a martial emperor from the Panwu imperial court seemed to remember something and said in surprise, "That dog seems to be Battle Emperor Shao, who has followed the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master for many years?" Everyone turned to look, and some people couldn't help but change their expressions. Battle Emperor Shao. Who didn't know the #1 general under the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master? It was just that no one had thought that a yellow-furred dog like this would be connected to the name Battle Emperor Shao. This was too surprising. It seems that if I want to capture this Dao Yuan Emperor, I must kill this old dog first. Battle Emperor Jing Ya's eyes were cold. In his memory, Battle Emperor Shao wasn't that terrifying. At most, he was a loyal dog under the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master. Although he had left behind a fearsome reputation in the starry sky a long time ago, it was mostly because his master was the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion Master. Ha ha ha! Goldie was so angry that he laughed. These old bastards were really blind. If you show your true cultivation, would they dare to underestimate you? Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. These old fellows probably didn't know how powerful Goldie was now. What right do these idiots have to make me show my power? Goldie was very disdainful and arrogant, his dog face full of arrogance. The conversation between the two was calm and composed, as if they didn't have the slightest awareness of being prey. Absolute Martial Emperor, Battle Emperor Jingya, and the others couldn't help but be stunned. They were already in such a desperate situation, yet this man and dog still dared to be so arrogant? I can see that they have something to rely on. Everyone, don't be careless. When we fight later, we must use all our strength. Absolute Martial Emperor reminded. Everyone nodded. As martial emperors, they naturally wouldn't be careless. Goldie smiled and said, "There's no need to fight later. I will give you a dignified death. Kill yourselves now, and I guarantee that I will bury you one by one and erect tombstones, so that the future generations will remember how you died." Old dog, your master is already on the verge of death, yet you still dare to be so arrogant. Aren't you afraid of being killed? Battle Emperor Hun Tong, who was like a burly man, shouted. "It's better if we kill him. We can make stew." Another martial emperor said with a smile. It seemed like a provocation, but the atmosphere was extremely oppressive and murderous. Their conversation was a formless test and confrontation. Is that so? Goldie's eyes were gloomy. Then I would like to see if you have the ability to do so. Swoosh. His figure disappeared into thin air and appeared in front of Battle Emperor Hun Tong in the next instant. Piss off. Battle Emperor Hun Tong roared as his black armor glowed and emitted an earth-shattering power. He formed a seal with his right hand and smashed it forward. Boom! A rain of light rained down furiously and the space collapsed. The power of this punch was peerlessly ferocious. Goldie harumphed coldly and waved his paw. With a forceful press, the sky and earth seemed to collapse and a boundless torrent of destruction was produced. Battle Emperor Hun Tong's burly figure was smashed into pieces by the paw. His body exploded and his soul was pulverized. He died on the spot. The bloody scene shocked everyone present. A fly dares to be so arrogant? You must be tired of living. Goldie spat disdainfully. Quick! The Ju Xing Martial Emperor, Battle Emperor Jingya, and the others wore solemn expressions. They didn't dare to hesitate any longer and immediately attacked. Kill! Treasure Light howled and Dao sounds surged. The 7 martial emperors from the Demon Court and Panwu Court each took out their treasures and Dao arts and charged at Goldie. Everyone could see that Goldie was the greatest threat. In an instant, the sky and earth fell into chaos and collapse. Battles between martial emperors were never small fights. They could easily pluck the stars and the moon, destroy the heavens and earth, and possess world-shocking might. Amidst such attacks, Goldie's fur glowed and finally revealed the terrifying might of a martial ancestor. He was clearly a dog, but he seemed to be the ruler of a great Dao. Just the might he released was enough to suppress the entire battlefield, causing his opponents to hold their breaths and turn pale. Damn it! This old dog has reached the martial ancestor realm. We've been tricked. Run! Cries of shock and fear rang out continuously. Even an ant with the power of a martial ancestor was enough to make any martial emperor feel despair, let alone a dog. You want to leave? Have you gotten my permission? Goldie grunted coldly as he raised his claw and struck out horizontally. The glow of the Tao covered the heavens and the earth, and it was interweaved with the supreme might of the martial ancestor realm. Rumble! Martial emperors were slapped to death one after another like pieces of paper. Their bodies split into pieces, and they evaporated amidst the boundless glow of the Tao. In just a short moment, the ultimate martial emperor, Battle Emperor Clearcliff, and the others were crushed successively amidst their terror. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun had no room to interfere at all. When he wanted to make Goldie leave one alive, it was already a step too late. The dust and dirt dispersed. Goldie seemed to be dissatisfied, and he spat fiercely. All of you idiots are trying to take advantage of me. Dignified great emperors were extremely dazzling in the past. They were like supreme existences that were revered by countless living beings and possessed boundless divine might. But in the eyes of imperial ancestors like Goldie, they seemed so weak. Was it because they weren't strong enough? No, it wasn't. It was because Goldie was stronger than them. Let's go. Lin Sun didn't sigh with emotion. He turned around and flashed towards the flying immortal river. Goldie waved his claws and put away the spoils of war that were left on the battlefield before flying over as well. Only a mess and blood were left on the battlefield. The flying immortal river was vast and mighty as it descended from the sky. It was like the Milky Way descending from the 9 heavens. The river water was snow-white and dazzling, flickering with a divine luster. Rumor had it that the source of the flying immortal river came from a divine spring in the Kunlun ruins. The river water was clear and turbid, so it could flow in the void. If one wanted to enter the Kunlun ruins, one had to leap over the river, follow its flow, and trace its source. When he saw the familiar flying immortal river, Lin Sun couldn't help but recall the scene when he first came. At that time, he was only at the peak of the saint stage, and he was accompanied by Ah Hu, Old Toad, Ah Lu, and Little Silver. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. When he came for the second time, he was already a peak great emperor, but Ah Hu and the others were missing. I wonder where they are now. A trace of uncertainty flashed through Lin Sun's eyes, and then he shook his head. A fleeting look could be seen in Lin Sun's eyes, but he soon shook his head. Together with Goldie, he soared into the sky and charged toward the void where the fairy river was. Chapter 24:18 Kunlun Ruins. The world was vast, and the void was filled with thick, chaotic qi. Between the mountains, rivers, grass, and trees, abundant and powerful vitality flowed. This place seemed to have been silent for thousands of years. It was uninhabited, and it exuded a primitive and desolate aura. Standing here was like returning to the beginning of chaos. The sky here was misty and high, suffused with a dark green color. There were stars moving in it, and streams of chaotic qi fell. On the ground, mountains rose and fell. It was vast and boundless. Standing here, one felt especially small. Whoosh, the vast wind surged between heaven and earth like a horn from ancient times. This place was like the residence of ancient gods. The power of the order of heaven and earth was abnormally strong and firm, and there was a kind of pressure from the great Tao. As soon as Lin Sun and Old Toad appeared, they felt a great pressure. They had no choice but to circulate their cultivation to resolve the pressure. Only an emperor stage can resolve such pressure. It seems that the opening of Kunlun ruins this time should be Emperor Shi Tiandi's doing. Big Yellow's eyes flickered. In the past, every time Kunlun ruins opened, it would produce pressure from the great Tao. However, there had never been such a terrifying pressure like now. Lin Sun spread out his divine consciousness and calmly sensed. Soon, he captured some residual auras that belonged to Emperor stage figures. Obviously, there were many Emperor realm cultivators who had arrived before them. Let's go. Lin Sun and Big Yellow did not delay and immediately followed the residual auras. Along the way, it was as if they were revisiting old places. The treasure refining ground, inverted mountain, Yulong Mountain. They were all areas that Lin Sun had conquered back then. Back then, he had defeated a group of opponents from the Starry Ancient Path here and made a name for himself on the Starry Ancient Path. Now that he had entered again, his state of mind was completely different. When they passed by the forbidden area of the pilgrimage platform, Lin Sun could not help but want to revisit it because it was on the pilgrimage platform that he had met his 9th senior brother, Guyupu, and the suppressed solitary sky demon emperor. It was also on the pilgrimage platform that he had obtained the inheritance left behind by the master of the heart core. This is the direction to the Tao Suppression Cliff, Big Yellow suddenly said. The Tao Suppression Cliff, along with the pilgrimage platform and the nameless forbidden area, was known as one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun. Rumor had it that the Tao Suppression Cliff gathered the origin aura of the myriad Taos in the heavens, and it was extremely dangerous. Since ancient times, many people who wanted to reach the monarch ancestor realm would risk their lives to come here. The reason was that the aura of the grand Tao ancestral root could only be found on the Tao Suppression Precipice. Could it be that Master wanted to use the power of the Tao Suppression Cliff to suppress Shi Tiandi? Big Yellow's expression kept changing. At the same time, Lin Sun thought of many things in the past. On the Yulong Mountain, one of the 9 secrets, Lin Sun had seen a wisp of willpower left by the Great Way Lawless Bell. It was through the Lawless Bell that Lin Sun learned many secrets. For example, the rectangular bell and the Tao Refinement Source Furnace were born in the Kunlun ruins. The Tao Refinement Source Furnace was born on the Ascension platform, and the rectangular bell was born on the Tao Suppression Cliff. The rectangular bell had once relied on the power of the Dark Parasol Divine Tree with senior brother Li Xianwei to enter the ancient Desolation realm to train. Thus, the rectangular bell's aura still lingered on the ancient Desolation realm's Dark Parasol Mountain. According to the rectangular bell, at the beginning of the primeval times, a group of sages had once entered the Kunlun ruins. On the Tao Suppression Cliff, they'd gathered their lifetime's worth of effort in order to refine the number 1 divine weapon in the primeval times. But in the end, these sages had encountered danger and died. However, after being nurtured by the quintessence energy of the great Tao for countless years, the divine weapon that they had yet to refine had miraculously given birth to a divine weapon. This divine weapon was the Great Way Lawless Bell. Besides that, the owner of the Insignificance Bao Tian had once fought enemies from all directions on the Tao Suppression Cliff. It was also when he left the Tao Suppression Cliff that he suffered a sneak attack from the Golden Crow Emperor. From all of these, it could be seen how dangerous and mysterious the Tao Suppression Cliff, one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun, was. Since ancient times, countless major events that few people knew about had erupted there. Now, it was very likely that the Bronze Sparrow Pavilion's master and Shi Tiandi were fighting on the Tao Suppression Cliff. When he thought up to here, Lin Sun's heart tightened. He didn't dare dally and hurried with Big Yellow at full speed. The Tao Suppression Cliff was a restricted area. This expanse of the heavens and the earth was filled with a strange and terrifying shattered energy of order. It was like a sandstorm that swept through the heavens and the earth. Not to mention entering, ordinary experts would be instantly annihilated if they took a step closer. Even existences as formidable as Emperor Stage existences had to be careful and vigilant when heading to the Tao Suppression Cliff. Otherwise, they would definitely suffer a great calamity. Just think about it, countless fragments of the law of order that had shattered like sand had transformed into a storm that raged. How terrifying was that level of power? Quickly take out the sword cauldron. When they arrived at this area, Big Yellow's expression became solemn. According to legend, The Tao suppression cliff suppressed the quintessence energy of all Taos in the world. Just by looking at this terrifying scene, one could tell that the legend was not exaggerated at all. The sword cauldron whizzed out, blooming with hundreds of millions of rays of light. The purple orderly phoenix flame flowed with crystal-clear rays of light, dense and steaming. Rumble almost at the same time, a storm of fragments of order swept over and was about to drown Lin Sun and Big Yellow. The sword cauldron glowed and opened a light curtain, isolating the storm of order. Although it still produced a great impact, it was still easily resolved by Lin Sun. This power of order is really a good treasure. Big Yellow sighed with emotion. He had coveted the orderly phoenix flame in the sword cauldron more than once. Unfortunately, such a divine object was too rare. Big Yellow, lead the way. Lin Sun controlled the sword cauldron and moved forward. After arriving at the Tao suppression cliff, the aura belonging to the Emperor stage that he had been tracking along the way had completely disappeared, and his divine sense was also greatly hindered. That feeling was like a mortal encountering a sandstorm in the desert, and he couldn't even recognize the direction. This made Lin Sun's expression also grave. Fortunately, they had the sword cauldron. For an ordinary Emperor stage character, walking in such a terrible and evil place was bound to be difficult. Their speed would be greatly hindered, and if they were not careful, they would be in trouble. Big Yellow led the way, and it walked cautiously. Along the way, all kinds of broken power of order were tumbling, like a raging and violent torrent, sweeping the world. That kind of power was enough to make any Emperor stage tremble. Taoism Pier, help! Suddenly, from the area not far away, there was a hurried cry. Several divine rainbows rushed out of the torrent of order with difficulty, approaching Lin Sun and the others. And behind them, rolling fragments of order were tumbling like a raging sea, about to drown their figures. Which orthodoxy are you from? Big Yellow shouted. We are from the primitive Taoism court. Someone shouted from afar. This time we came under orders to help Emperor Shi Tiandi kill the enemy. I hope you can help us. Obviously, due to the serious obstruction of their divine sense, these Emperor stage characters from the primitive Taoism court did not realize that there was something wrong with the identity of Lin Sun and Big Yellow. Then do you know where Emperor Shi Tiandi is now? Big Yellow asked again. From here, within 1,000 miles, you can see the Tao suppressing cliff, where Emperor Shi Tiandi is waiting. Speaking of this, the man seemed to realize something and said in surprise, Taoism Pier, didn't you get any guidance before coming here? While talking, these Emperor stage characters of the primitive Taoism court had already approached, and finally saw the appearance of Lin Sun and Big Yellow. They were all stunned, and then immediately changed their expressions. You are, Big Yellow grinned, it's you. As he spoke, he raised his claws and swung them fiercely. Boom! The terrifying light of the way swept out, and these Emperor stage characters of the primitive Taoism court immediately tried to resist, but how could they withstand the power of the Emperor ancestor? In an instant, their figures were blasted out, and before they could stand firm, their bodies were engulfed by the torrent of order nearby. No! Damn it, I won't let you go even if I die. As soon as the shrill screams sounded, they stopped abruptly. Their bodies were crushed by the fine power of order, and in an instant, they turned into ashes and smoke. This torrent of order is too terrifying. Big Yellow gasped. The power of order that filled this world was as fine as gravel, not complete, and was obviously formed by the convergence of different power of order. They were raging and violent, like the collapse of the power of the heavenly way sweeping through the world. Lin Sun took a deep breath, did not say much, and continued to move forward. Usually, a distance of 1,000 miles could be crossed in an instant with a single teleportation, but now it took a full 4 hours to walk in this fierce world. This was also with the orderly phoenix flame of the sword cauldron resisting and protecting, otherwise, the time spent was bound to be very long. In the distance, a steep and majestic divine mountain as straight as a sword appeared between heaven and earth. This mountain was so high that it pierced deep into the clouds, and it was impossible to estimate. Torrents of order storms, like evil dragons, roared and galloped around the divine mountain, and it was a shocking sight. Lin Sun immediately sensed something and looked up. At the highest point of the divine mountain, he saw the dazzling power of order in the shape of a lotus. It was the law of order of Nirvana heaven. Over there. Lin Sun immediately guessed that second senior brother Zhong Qiu must be at the peak of the divine mountain. Be careful. At the same time, Big Yellow reminded them. When they followed its gaze, they saw several dazzling lights shining near the sacred mountain. There were several tens of them. Upon closer inspection, the dazzling Taoist lights were actually martial emperors. It went without saying that these martial emperors must have received orders from heavenly monarch Shi to come as reinforcements. There were people from the 6 Tao courts, the 10 war clans, and the primordial imperial clans. These people were distributed in different areas, as if they were waiting for something. Not long after, from the highest point of the divine mountain, an indifferent voice filled with supreme majesty suddenly sounded. Continue. The dozens of martial emperors attacked together without hesitation. Some took out their martial emperors' weapons, and some used their dharma to attack the divine mountain that pierced through the clouds. It seemed like they were going to destroy the mountain. P.S. I actually dropped to the 21st place, please give me a monthly ticket. Chapter 24:19. An ordinary mountain would be reduced to ashes with a flick of an emperor's finger, even if it was covered in restrictive power. However, the majestic mountain before them, towering into the clouds, merely trembled violently after being bombarded by the emperors with all their might. Not even a single rock crumbled. Moreover, judging from the emperor's posture, it was obvious that they'd attacked it more than once. What are they doing? Lin Sun's eyes flashed. Whatever it is, it's definitely disadvantageous to Master's situation. Big Yellow's eyes glinted with murderous intent. A bunch of fools. You can't even destroy a mountain. Continue. The indifferent voice filled with supreme majesty resounded once more from the highest point of the mountain. These Emperor Realm experts were all from the starry heavens, and in their respective worlds, they could be said to be supreme existences. But now that they were being reprimanded and cursed like this, not a single one of them dared to retort, and they didn't even dare to get angry because of it. There was no doubt that there was only one person in this world who could do this, Emperor Shi Tiandi. Rumble the divine mountain shook and the world shook. The dozens of emperors, regardless of their level of cultivation, unleashed all their might to attack the divine mountain. For a time, the light of the Tao was like a tide and the monarch weapons were like rain. Lin Sun noticed that although the storm formed from the torrent of order was extremely terrifying, it couldn't approach the divine mountain. Because of this, the dozens of Emperor Realm experts could focus on attacking without worrying about their own safety. We can't wait any longer. Attack! Big Yellow charged forward and let out a deafening roar. Master, Big Yellow is here! His voice shook the heavens. Boom! Big Yellow charged forward and killed the emperor closest to him with a single swipe of his claw. His flesh and blood burst open and his soul scattered. His appearance caused the atmosphere to change abruptly. The pupils of the emperors shrank as if they couldn't believe that there was someone in this world who dared to disrupt Emperor Shi Tiandi's plans. It's Battle Emperor Xiao! Exclamations sounded as they recognized Big Yellow's identity. Heh, a dog dares to come and ruin this seat's business? You're courting death. Suddenly, the sneer of Heavenly Emperor Shi Tiandi resounded from the highest point of the divine mountain. Fine, all of you go and kill this dog first so as to avoid being an eyesore. F*CKU, I'm going to kill you later. Big Yellow's eyes reddened with killing intent, and it completely released the might of an emperor ancestor. While there were many martial emperors near the divine mountain, There were only 3 true progenitors. Upon seeing this, the 3 emperors pounced on Big Yellow right away. Even though Big Yellow was burning with anxiety, he was besieged by the 3 emperor ancestors for a while, and couldn't break through the siege and rush up the divine mountain. This dog thing is actually already an emperor ancestor. This is truly unexpected. The other great emperors relaxed. Someone even teased, "I wonder how delicious it would be if we stew this big yellow dog into a pot of meat soup." His words caused many people to drool. If it was any other time, they wouldn't dare to slander and humiliate an emperor ancestor. Even if the emperor ancestor was a dog, they would still have to lower their heads and show respect. But now they didn't care at all. That was because they could all tell that the large dog was already trapped, and would suffer a calamity sooner or later. Puff! Suddenly, the emperor ancestor who teased about stewing meat soup was beheaded silently. Before he died, there was still a mocking smile on his face. Obviously, he was killed before he could react. Blood splashed, and the scarlet color was dazzling. This sudden scene made everyone stiffen, and their pupils constricted. What was going on? Puff! Another emperor ancestor's body was suddenly split in half, as if it was cut in half by a sharp blade. This strange scene made the emperor ancestor's scalp numb. 2 of their companions died one after another, but there was no trace of the enemy, and they couldn't even see how they were killed. This was too terrifying. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure rushed out from the void, and the sword cauldron roared, sweeping up hundreds of millions of rays of light, rumbling through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. "Big Yellow!" Lin Sun roared. Big Yellow, who was besieged, didn't hesitate to gather all the strength in his body, and waved a long bone stick to break through. It was also at this moment that the world seemed to be still. Forbidden death magic. Bang! The emperor ancestor who was about to resist was smashed into pieces by the stick. His flesh and blood burst open, and even his spirit was crushed into powder. Such a bloody scene caused screams to ring out from the surroundings. Lin Sun and Big Yellow had a tacit understanding. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and the 5 doppelgangers whizzed out, attacking the emperor ancestor near the sacred mountain. Big Yellow took advantage of the situation to attack the other 2 emperor ancestors, fierce and domineering. Rumble! The world shook, and the war broke out. At this moment, Shi Tiandi's surprised voice sounded from the highest point of the sacred mountain, the second stage of the devouring abyss. "It's you, Luo Qingxuan's little bastard." Obviously, Shi Tiandi had seen through Lin Sun's identity. Whether it was Lin Sun or Big Yellow, they turned a deaf ear to him, and rushed forward with all their strength, without holding back. Life and death with one sword. As Lin Sun's Dao sword slashed out, there seemed to be endless sword qi emerging, turning into the image of a Zhou Su world, and released. Puff! The 2 emperor ancestors who were targeted by him were instantly killed on the spot by the unparalleled sword qi. His body glowed, and his power was like that of a peerless demon. The sword cauldron rumbled, indestructible in defense, and indestructible in attack. Anyone who was targeted by him was killed in the blink of an eye. The domineering momentum shocked the crowd. No one could have imagined that a 4th-level emperor ancestor could be so heaven-defying. At the same time, Lin Sun's 5 doppelgangers were also using their martial arts, and their power was not inferior to Big Yellow's. Those below the 6th-level emperor ancestor were like decorations, and were easily killed. Those in the 7th-level emperor ancestor could barely resist, but not for long. As for those in the 8th-level emperor ancestor, they tried their best to stay alive, but as the battle went on, they were gradually injured, and could not hold on any longer. For a time, dozens of emperors on the battlefield were defeated by Lin Sun alone. There were cries of anger and horror everywhere. In just a moment, more than half of the emperor ancestors had been killed. On Big Yellow's side, he had already suppressed the 2 emperor ancestors to the point where they could not lift their heads. They were riddled with injuries, but he still had the upper hand. damn it. Shi Tiandi could clearly sense that the situation was not optimistic, and he cursed in exasperation. In fact, he had already paid a great price to open the Kunlun ruins and gather the emperor ancestors of the various orthodoxies. However, he did not expect such a shocking change to happen before he could destroy the divine mountain. Right now, the situation could not be changed according to his will. Boom! Near the divine mountain, the massacre was like a frenzy. Lin Sun had completely shown an unstoppable momentum, causing a storm of blood. In the end, the remaining emperor ancestors broke down and chose to flee. They did not dare to go against Lin Sun at all, and they were panicking like dogs. Lin Sun did not stop them, nor did he chase after them. The most important thing now was to kill his way up the divine mountain and support second senior brother Zhongqiu. Of course, the first thing he had to do was deal with the two emperor ancestors. However, to Lin Sun's surprise, before he could get close, the two emperor ancestors who were already in a passive position and riddled with injuries actually fled as well. In fact, they realized that the situation was irreversible, and if they continued fighting, they would most likely suffer a calamity. That was why they chose to flee without hesitation. At the end of the day, they were only following orders. When their lives were threatened, the first thing they thought about was self-preservation, and it was impossible for them to truly risk their lives for Shi Tiandi. Spineless! Big Yellow spat on the ground and rushed towards the sacred mountain with Lin Sun. Boom! As soon as they charged up, a terrifying and boundless power of order pressed down. The power caused Big Yellow to let out a muffled groan and was almost blasted away. Lin Sun made a prompt decision and withdrew the sword cauldron without hesitation. He relied on the power of the Order Phoenix Flames to resist the terrifying pressure. However, the higher they went, the greater the pressure. Even if it was an emperor ancestor, they would not be able to withstand it without a treasure like the sword cauldron. You really dare to come and court death? Shi Tiandi's voice suddenly sounded, filled with coldness and indifference. Zhongqiu can't hold on any longer. When I break free, it will be the time of your death. Bullsh *T. Big Yellow cursed, his eyes red. You dog, if Zhongqiu is still alive, why hasn't he made a sound? Shi Tiandi's voice was indifferent. Big Yellow's expression changed when he heard this. Yes, why hadn't his master made a sound until now? Ignore him, let's kill our way up first. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. If he's really confident, why would this old thing be here talking nonsense with us? I'm afraid his situation isn't any better. Big Yellow took a deep breath and nodded his head. If Shi Tiandi was fine, there would be no need to talk nonsense, and there would be no need to ask those Emperor Realm experts to come and help. The reason why Shi Tiandi had not shown up until now was that his situation was not optimistic. As time passed, although the pressure was getting heavier, Lin Sun and Big Yellow rushed forward with all their might and gradually approached the peak of the Divine Mountain. The peak of the Divine Mountain was lonely and treacherous. There was only a foothold less than 30 meters in circumference, and other than that, there were only steep cliffs on all sides. Near the cliffs, there was a frenzied torrent of order, like thousands of black dragons dancing wildly, breathtaking. There was no doubt that if they fell from the mountain, they would be instantly swept away by the torrent of order and torn into powder. At the peak of the Divine Mountain, a tall figure sat cross-legged. In front of him floated the lotus-like energy of the Order of Nirvanic Freedom. However, his eyes were tightly shut, and his face was pale as if he had suffered a serious injury. The aura around his body was extremely chaotic, causing people to worry that he would go berserk and perish. Big Yellow was so agitated that it could not help but shout when it saw the tall figure, "Master!" This figure was the second successor of Fangtsuan Mountain, Zhongqiu. P.S. I suddenly added an update. Isn't it exciting? Seeking monthly votes. Chapter 2420. Zhongqiu's aura was disordered. He sat alone on the top of the mountain. He was obviously seriously injured, but he still exuded an oppressive aura. He was like the backbone of the heavens and earth, full of pride and arrogance. Lin Sun's heart tightened. What was going on? His eyes glanced around, but he did not see any trace of Shi Tiandi. Master! Seeing that Zhong Qiu's eyes were closed and there was no response, Big Yellow became anxious. He was about to rush over but was stopped by Lin Sun. Second senior brother is not in trouble yet. Don't mess around, Lin Sun said. Suddenly, he saw a bronze Dao bell standing on the other side of Zhong Qiu. It was mottled with vicissitudes and was branded with obscure and mysterious Dao patterns. It was the Great Way Lawless Bell. Moreover, it was not the power of will, but the bell itself. Lin Sun remembered that this bell was born on the Dao suppression cliff. A long time ago, he and Li Xianwei had entered the ancient desolation realm together with the power of the divine dark parasol tree. The foundation of the lawless bell was even on par with the source furnace of treasure refining. The power of the source furnace of treasure refining, at this moment, the silent and motionless lawless bell seemed to have sensed something. It woke up from its silence and gave out an ethereal voice. At the same time, an ancient consciousness swept out and instantly captured the aura of Lin Sun and Big Yellow. So it's you, little friend. The lawless bell spoke with a hint of surprise. I didn't expect you to have integrated the 9 Emperor weapons of Kunlun into your natal Emperor weapon. It's really amazing. When Lin Sun first entered the secret realm of Mount Yulong in the Kunlun ruins, he had received guidance from the lawless bell's willpower. It was not surprising that it recognized him. Lin Sun was not in the mood to exchange pleasantries. He could not help but ask, "Senior, what's going on?" The lawless bell said in an ethereal voice, "A few years ago, your second senior brother came and arranged a battle with Shi Tiandi here. Although he suppressed Shi Tiandi under this mountain in the end, your second senior brother was also seriously injured." Lin Sun and Big Yellow's expressions changed. Only now did they know that Shi Tiandi was suppressed. No wonder so many Emperor Realm figures were summoned to attack this mountain. Obviously, this was the only way to let Shi Tiandi, who was suppressed under this mountain, escape. "How is my second senior brother now?" Lin Sun asked. He had to go all out in order to suppress Heavenly Emperor Shi. Therefore, he abandoned all distractions from the outside world and fused his body, mind, and Tao into the energy of order of the Nirvanic Freedom Heaven. Even so, it's impossible to kill Shi Tiandi in a short period of time. According to my deduction, if your second senior brother can guard this place for around 100 years, it should be more than enough time to eliminate this great enemy. 100 years. Both Lin Sun and Big Yellow were worried. It was also at this time that Shi Tiandi's indifferent voice sounded again. What a joke! With Zhong Qiu's injuries, would he be able to last for 100 years? In my opinion, his injuries will be too severe in less than a year, causing his cultivation to collapse, and he'll perish completely. Big Yellow was enraged, and it was so furious that it roared, "Old fart, you're already being King suppressed, so why do you have so much nonsense to say? It's futile no matter how angry I am. I come from the Nirvana realm and possess the power of immortality. Even if I'm suppressed now, there will be a day when I can escape." After that, Shi Tiandi's voice fell into silence. No matter how Big Yellow cursed, his voice could not be heard again. Lin Sun asked, "Senior, can't second senior brother's injuries be cured?" "No," Big Yellow answered. "This is a Tao injury, so it can only be resolved by himself. Moreover, outsiders can't intervene in this suppression." Lin Sun frowned. He didn't expect that this duel, which had attracted the attention of all the heavens in the starry sky, would turn into such a dangerous situation. In my opinion, Zhong Qiu has great perseverance and wisdom, so he won't be in trouble. "Don't worry too much, my young friend," Big Yellow said. "How can I not worry when he's already injured like this?" Big Yellow was burning with anxiety. Lin Sun also felt it was very tricky. If they could kill Shi Tiandi in 100 years, it would naturally be the best result. But in this 100 years, second senior brother's injuries would break out and he would suffer from qi deviation. What should they do then? Is there no other way? Lin Sun asked. Just as Big Yellow was about to say something, a voice suddenly came from Zhong Qiu, who had been sitting there with his eyes closed. Junior brother, Shi Tiandi's injuries are more serious than mine. I'll definitely kill him in 100 years. You and Big Yellow don't have to worry. Zhong Qiu's voice was calm and indifferent, still as conceited and arrogant as before. Hearing this, Lin Sun and Big Yellow's eyes lit up. Senior brother, Lin Sun was about to say something, but Zhong Qiu's voice sounded again. Junior brother, let Big Yellow stay. You leave with Big Yellow and go to the core ruins of the ultimate. Find your fourth senior brother and then kill him. These 4 words revealed a sense of determination. Lin Sun was shocked and his mind was in turmoil. Among the 50 successors of Mount Heart and Heart, first senior brother Dozhan Di, third senior sister Ruosu, fifth senior brother Qi Jun, 8th senior brother Bo Swansea, 11th senior brother Puzhen, and so on, had already crossed the void and gone to the other side of the starry sky after killing the nameless emperor. As for 9th senior brother Guyupu, 14th senior brother Jishio, and so on, they had all passed away. Lin Sun had been curious about who the 4th senior brother was among the top 5 senior brothers and sisters. But over the years, no matter which senior brother or sister he met, they never talked about anything related to this person. Even when Lin Sun asked about it, he didn't get any answer. But now, second senior brother Zhong Qiu told him to kill 4th senior brother. This was really shocking. Why was that? I'll let Big Yellow tell you about this after you leave. Zhong Qiu's voice sounded again. Anyway, Master didn't kill him back then because he wanted him to repent and remember his mistakes so that he could rebuild his Taoist heart. But now it seems that he has become paranoid and must be eliminated. There was a sense of loss and determination in his voice. At this point, Zhong Qiu's voice also fell silent. No matter how Lin Sun and Big Yellow tried to communicate with him, it was in vain. Lin Sun, you leave with Big Yellow. I'll keep watch here. Big Yellow made a decision. As he spoke, he rushed to the top of the mountain and stood in front of Zhong Qiu. Little friend, let's go. Big Yellow floated in the air, sprinkling mottled light and shadow. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment. He sighed softly and nodded, saying, I'll be back. Wait a moment, she suddenly said and walked out of the heaven accessing place. Back then, he saved me once. This time, I'll stay and protect him. Lin Sun was stunned and then nodded, okay. When she entered the dark world for the first time, he fought with Yan Xing, the purple-haired woman, and was seriously injured. It was second senior brother who saved her. Now, she had chosen to stay. Obviously, he wanted to repay second senior brother's kindness. Moreover, with him and Big Yellow together, Lin Sun felt more at ease. Little bastard, you'd better pray that you don't die too early. When I get out, I'll capture you immediately. Suddenly, Shi Tiandi's voice sounded, full of bone-chilling coldness. Lin Sun ignored him and went down the mountain with Big Yellow. Walking down the divine mountain, with Big Yellow leading the way, the raging torrent of order could no longer affect Lin Sun. Halfway down the divine mountain, Lin Sun could not help but turn around and look at the peak of the divine mountain. He could vaguely see the figures of Shi, Big Yellow, and second senior brother Zhong Qiu. What's the name of this mountain? Lin Sun asked. Tao Suppression. Big Yellow's voice was ethereal. The place where Zhong Qiu is sitting cross-legged is the Tao Suppression Cliff. Look at the torrent of order in this world. It's gathering the origin aura of countless great Tao. Once it's leaked, the entire Kunlun ruins will probably be destroyed. Lin Sun nodded and said, Senior, can you tell me about fourth senior brother now? Big Yellow fell silent for a moment and said, Your fourth senior brother's Taoist name is Ling Xuanzi. He's a genius with the most wisdom among the descendants of Mount Innerheart Ling Xuanzi. He was born with wisdom and had 9 orifices in his heart. His spiritual sea was like a lotus. His talent was extraordinary and rare. When he was young, he became the disciple of the Master of the Heart. When he was 9 years old, he had already seen through the essence of the Saint Realm and made a great vow: all the laws in the world can't escape my eyes. All the Daos in the world should be controlled by me. All living beings in the world, seeing me is like seeing the heavens. 9 years old, he had crossed the shackles of the lower 5 realms and broken through the 9 tribulations of longevity to enter the Saint Realm. This kind of cultivation speed could be said to be shocking and unprecedented. What was even more shocking was the great vow Ling Xuanzi made: seeing me is like seeing the heavens. 10 years later, Ling Xuanzi found the Master of the Heart and said, "Master, from today onwards, I can enter the great Emperor realm." Can it be said that the pupil has surpassed the Master? In other words, the attainments of the great Tao that the Master mastered when he broke through the great Emperor realm back then were inferior to him. The Master of the Heart did not say a word and only let out a long sigh. As expected, on that day, Ling Xuanzi welcomed the great Emperor Tribulation and became a great emperor in one go. This matter caused a stir in Mount Fangsuan. The other descendants were all shocked and thought that Ling Xuanzi's talent could be said to be the best in the world. In the future, his achievements were destined to surpass them. However, not long after Ling Xuanzi became a great emperor, he encountered a calamity in his cultivation. In the deepest part of his Tao heart, there was a demon in his heart that erupted and he walked on the path of evil. At that time, Ling Xuanzi took advantage of the fact that the Master of the Heart was away to declare war on his fellow disciples. He wanted to determine the winner through a Tao discussion. If he lost, he would have to swear on his Tao heart to serve Ling Xuanzi as his master. If he won, he would destroy his own great Tao. This action was opposed by the descendants of Mount Fangsuan. They felt that Ling Xuanzi's action was too extreme and deviated from the Tao. Therefore, no one participated in the Tao discussion. However, Ling Xuanzi did not stop just like that. He took the initiative to fight and defeated over 10 senior and junior brothers in succession before imprisoning them. He said that he would make them willingly swear an oath to serve him as their master within 3 days. This action completely infuriated the other descendants of the heart, and they decided to capture Ling Xuanzi together. However, before this internal battle could erupt, Ling Xuanzi was suppressed by the Master of the Heart, who had returned to the sect with a single hand. Chapter 24-21. He had been suppressed for countless years. Even though the Heart Gate had collapsed, Ling Xuanzi was still suppressed under the Heart Ruins. The Heart Master had once said, "When Ling Xuanzi repents and dispels his inner demons and reconstructs his Tao heart, the seal will naturally be undone." The seal had yet to be broken, which obviously proved that Ling Xuanzi's inner demons had not been completely expelled. Hearing this, Lin Sun could not help but sigh. He became a saint at the age of 9 and a peak great emperor 10 years later. One could imagine how heaven-defying and terrifying this 4th senior brother's aptitude was. Compared to him, the so-called geniuses and geniuses in this world were simply not worth mentioning. Even Lin Sun himself, who was known as the first peak great emperor in 100,000 years, was far inferior to this 4th senior brother in terms of cultivation advancement. Lin Sun asked, "Senior, do you know what exactly my 4th senior brother's inner demons are?" "Seeing me is like seeing the heavens," said the restless bell. That was Ling Xuanzi's sage Tao grand wish. However, it had also become his inner demon. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered as he recalled the sage Tao grand wish he had made back then. He finally understood why those senior brothers and sisters were unwilling to mention 4th senior brother's name. The restless bell continued, "It's not a good thing to cultivate too quickly, especially for a heaven-defying genius like Ling Xuanzi." He advances at a tremendous speed on the path of Tao, but once he takes the wrong path, the consequences are simply unimaginable. Lin Sun said, "He's been suppressed for so long, so why did second senior brother give the order to kill fourth senior brother?" A few years ago, Shi Tiandi went to the ultimate ruins to explore the heart ruins. In the end, although Shi Tiandi escaped from the ultimate ruins, he suffered serious injuries. Lin Sun could not help but nod to himself when the restless bell said this. He also remembered this past. It was precisely because of this opportunity that Zhong Qiu made a move and chose to fight Shi Tiandi to the death in the Kunlun ruins. According to Zhong Qiu's plan, the Tao suppression cliff suppresses the origin of all Taos in the world. It can imperceptibly counteract and resist the power of the Forbidden Order. In this way, killing the injured Shi Tiandi should be as easy as flipping his hand. However, an accident happened during the battle. The lawless bell paused for a moment and sighed. During the battle, Shi Tiandi had a thorough understanding of the great Tao energy and Tao techniques that Zhong Qiu had mastered. It was as if he had seen through every single detail of Zhong Qiu, causing Zhong Qiu to suffer many dangerous situations. It was also at that time that Zhong Qiu realized that Emperor Shi Tiandi had probably mastered the imperial scripture of the Grand Tao, the true self and supremacy technique that he had personally created. In this world, only Ling Xuanzi, who was suppressed in the core ruins, possesses such an inheritance. Lin Sun's pupils contracted. Ling Xuanzi taught it to Shi Tiandi? Lin Zhongtian. Back then, Ling Xuanzi read through all the Taoist scriptures on Mount Fangsuan, and he possessed many inheritances. For example, the inheritances created by the Battle Emperor, Zhong Qiu, Rosu, and others were all given to Ling Xuanzi to comprehend and study. It's undeniable that Ling Xuanzi is a peerless genius from ancient times to the present. He can almost easily comprehend the Tao and Tao he wants to master. But it's also because he leaked Zhong Qiu's inheritance to Shi Tian Emperor that Zhong Qiu's plan was almost disrupted. Although Shi Tian Emperor was suppressed in the end, he also paid a heavy price for it. Hearing this, Lin Sun's eyes were full of cold light. If so, what's the difference between my fourth senior brother and a traitor? No wonder second senior brother wants to kill him. If such a disaster is not eliminated, the Tao of Tiandi sect will be affected. This can only prove that he has been resentful and paranoid in the countless years he has been suppressed. That's why he did such a thing. The restless bell sighed again and said, "It's really a pity. A cultivation genius that was difficult to come by throughout the ages should have possessed an unimaginably bright future, yet a devil had appeared in his heart and taken the wrong path. How could others not feel pity for him? No matter how great his talent and foundation are, if his heart is not in the right place, it will be a disaster. It's not a pity. If I were his master, I would have abolished him," Lin Sun said calmly. As they talked, they had already walked out of the forbidden area of the Tao-suppressing cliff. The restless bell suddenly turned into the size of a little finger and fell on Lin's hair like a pendant, saying, "Young friend, I have a deep relationship with your Mount Fangsuan's orthodoxy, which is why I helped your senior brother previously. I will also guide you on the way to the sinkhole, but if you encounter any killing, I'm sorry I can't help you." Lin Sun was stunned and said, "Of course. I should solve the affairs between the descendants of Mountain Cun by myself. Thank you for your understanding." The restless bell seemed very peaceful. "In the past countless years, I have accompanied your senior brother Li Xianwei to the ancient Desolation territory and had the honor to meet the master of Tiandi sect and get his guidance. But I have never killed a living creature." "Not even one?" Lin Sun was surprised. "Not even one." The restless bell's voice was ethereal. "The sound of the bell is all living beings. I know that all living beings are suffering and can't bear to kill again. I can't control the killing intent of people in the world, but at least, I can control myself not to kill. Your senior brother Li Xianwei once said that my great way is too stubborn and stupid. It's fake mercy. The real mercy should be to teach all living beings and then to free them from the suffering of the ups and downs of the world. But this is not my great way. My bell is to let all living beings have the time to be enlightened. That's enough. After listening, Lin Sun thought for a while and said, Our paths are different. It's not stubbornness and stupidity. I think you can achieve what you have today because you are persistent. After a pause, he asked, Senior, how should we go to the ultimate ruins? The ultimate ruins is the place where all the streams in the world converge. It is the source of the flying fairy river in Kunlun ruins. There is a space-time tunnel that can lead to the ultimate ruins. The rustless bell said. Lin Sun thought for a while and started to act according to the guidance of the rustless bell. Originally, he planned to go to the Peach Garden Secret Realm, Mount Yulong Secret Realm, and the Pilgrimage Platform Forbidden Area again. But after thinking about it, he gave up. Swish! Lin Sun's figure flickered and began to move forward. The Kunlun ruins was so big that even the rustless bell couldn't tell how big it was. There were not only 3 forbidden and 9 secret places here, but also many other strange and unbelievable places. The Kunlun ruins was regarded as the ancestral court of the Great Way. Since ancient times, there had been rumors that the ancestral origin aura of all the Daos in the world could be found in the Kunlun ruins. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was not in the mood to explore them one by one. In fact, with his current cultivation realm, except for some of the rarest treasures in the world, ordinary small opportunities and small fortunes had long been ignored by him. 4 hours later, under the guidance of the rustless bell, Lin Sun arrived at a place where the sky and earth collapsed. The sky here had collapsed into one giant black hole after another. It was strangely still, but it was still enough to make one shudder. On the ground, there were deep ravines and abysses everywhere, densely packed and continuous. At the end of this strange world was a vast expanse of black nothingness. According to the rustless bell, the Black Void was one of the 3 forbidden areas of Kunlun, the nameless forbidden area. From ancient times until now, almost no one who entered it could return alive from the great perilous land of death. Lin Sun stood in the void and looked at the scene of the sky and earth collapsing. Then, he looked at the dark nameless forbidden area in the distance and could not help but feel awe. Even though he was a great emperor, when he arrived in this area, it made his hair stand on end and his heart palpitate uneasily. Senior, do you know what's hidden in the nameless forbidden area? Lin Sun asked. The rustless bell said, I heard that it's a broken path. It breaks the sky, the earth, the Great Way, and everything. There are also rumors that the nameless forbidden area is the origin of chaos born in the Kunlun ruins. As for what's hidden in it, I don't know either. After a pause, he said, however, I heard that your master, the master of the square inch, seems to have explored the nameless forbidden area. Lin Sun was stunned and did not say anything more. Under the guidance of the rustless bell, he soon found an incomparably huge ravine. In the deepest part of the ravine, light danced and the river surged, shining with dreamy divine brilliance. The end of the fairy river is here, said the rustless bell. It's a spring that blends with the mysterious power of time and space. If you enter from the spring, you can teleport to the ultimate ruins. Lin Sun nodded. Without hesitation, he flashed into the bottom of the ravine. The river surged, creating rolling waves, and the misty, illusory luster flickered, appearing very mysterious. In just a moment, Lin Sun noticed the spring. It covered an area of 9 meters, like a crack in the deepest part of the earth, and the water of the fairy river flowed out from it. Looking closely, the spring emitted a misty aura of time, and the order of space interweaved, converging into the mysterious power of time and space. Without the guidance of the rustless bell, Lin Sun dared not imagine that the source of the fairy river was such a wonderful scene. Don't worry, my young friend. The power of time and space is extremely strong. When you enter it, you will not be hurt, said the restless bell. Lin Sun nodded and did not hesitate anymore. He got up and rushed into it. Splash, the river splashed. When the dreamlike power of time and space touched Lin Sun, a strange feeling like an electric shock surged all over his body. Almost at the same time, the origin spirit vein in his chest suddenly released an extremely scorching aura, like an ancient fierce beast that was awakened from its slumber. It was completely out of control. The spiritual vein seemed to have been starved for countless years. It released a terrible white light, turned into the shape of a big abyss, and swallowed the power of time and space. Boom! Near the spring, there was an earth-shattering roar, and the originally stable power of time and space was violently shaken. That scene shocked even Wu Zhuzhong. He immediately said, "Let's go." At this moment, Lin Sun only felt that his body was hot, and his body was in turmoil. The violent power of time and space rushed into the spiritual vein like a raging torrent, making him dizzy and dizzy. When he heard the voice of the restless bell, Lin Sun rushed to the spring almost instinctively. P.S. Asking for monthly votes. Besides, the Chinese New Year was coming at the end of the month, and the goldfish was worried about how to keep updating. Chapter 24-22. Boom. The entrance of the spring seemed to turn into a storm whirlpool, splashing wild space-time turbulence. Lin Sun's figure disappeared into the depths of the spring earlier, so he avoided the disaster. Otherwise, if he was swept by the space-time turbulence, he would be torn into pieces in an instant. After a while, the spring returned to peace, but compared with the past, the space-time power lingering nearby was obviously weaker. The stars moved, and the world was spinning. Lin Sun only felt that his whole body was boiling hot, and he was uncontrollably moved, with distorted and colorful light and shadow in front of him. Nobody knew how long it had been. Lin Sun's body gradually calmed down, and his drowsy consciousness also became clear little by little. As soon as he thought of it, he immediately noticed that the spiritual vein was crystallized, crystal clear, and there was an unparalleled power of time surging in it. That feeling was like a transparent bottle filled with flowing water. Even Lin Sun had a feeling that the starving spiritual vein finally had a full meal. However, there was no transformation, but it seemed that it would transform at any time. Lin Sun immediately realized that kind of wonderful feeling. Perhaps, when the spiritual vein completely refined the power of time it had swallowed, there would be a third transformation. That was the so-called third stage of the power of devouring abyss. However, it was still too dangerous at that time. A little mistake might. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a lingering fear when he thought of the scene of space-time disorder around the spring. "How do you feel now, my young friend?" The voice of Wu Zhuzhong sounded with concern. "I'm fine now." Lin Sun took a deep breath, looked around, and found that he had come to a whirlpool portal. Outside this portal is the entrance to the ultimate. Wu Zhuzhong said, however, you should be mentally prepared. Outside the ultimate is the soul oblivion sea. Under the oppression of the Great Way, your cultivation will be suppressed below the Emperor realm. However, as long as you enter the ultimate, your cultivation will be restored. Lin Sun nodded. The soul oblivion sea. It was connected to the deepest part of the East Sea of Xiao Empire, which was counted as the lower world. A long time ago, when the old priest and the old priest were dormant in the forbidden city of Xiao Empire, their power was also suppressed. Otherwise, with their cultivation, they could easily pierce through the heavens. As far as Lin knew, after the Taoist War broke out in primitive times, the ancient desolation, the origin of all Tao, was sunk, and its original power was lost and turned into the inferior world. In other words, the lower realms were formed from the core of the land of origin. For example, the ruins of End, the soul oblivion ocean, the Tao burial sea, the bloodthirsty battlefield. All these extremely mysterious places were located in the lower dimensions. How could Lin Sun not understand that the mortal world was by no means a barren and abandoned land, but had a great history? When he thought about how he was still in the Kunlun ruins earlier, and how long had it been since he returned to the Soul Oblivion Ocean, Lin Sun could not help but be in a daze. It had been decades since he entered the starry sky ancient path. Even Lin Sun did not expect that he would have the opportunity to return to the mortal world under such circumstances. Without delay, Lin Sun rushed into the vortex portal. A vast blue sea immediately appeared in his field of vision. As far as the eye could see, the sky was high and the clouds were light. The blue waves were vast and boundless. However, at the same time, Lin Sun also sensed the appearance of a law from the great Tao. It suppressed his aura until it fell below the Emperor realm, and only stabilized when it reached the perfection of the quasi-Emperor realm. At the same time, the pressure of the great Tao law disappeared. The order law of this world is definitely not simple. Lin Sun stood on the blue sea with his hands behind his back and sighed with emotion. Back then, he was young and his cultivation was shallow, so he could not understand the wonders of this world. Now that he had returned, he was already the Tao Yuan Emperor who shocked the heavens of the starry sky. Only then did he understand how different the mortal world was. The rustless bell said, "The starry sky ancient path is vast and includes all the worlds in the world. However, there is only one starry sky ancient path that leads to the Kunlun ruins, and this mortal world is equivalent to the ruins of End, so it is naturally extraordinary." Lin Sun looked around, and the memories of his youth surfaced in his mind bit by bit. He still remembered that he had been invited by Zhao Jingxian to set off from the Xiao Empire with a group of descendants of the numinous treasure Holy Land. They crossed the Soul Oblivion Sea and arrived at the ruins of End safely. It was also in the Tao Burial Sea tomb that he met the three-legged golden toad's descendant, Old Toad Jin. Later on, he and the Old Toad broke into the Demon Saint's secret realm and fought with the Dragon Whale clan, the Golden Phoenix clan, the Herculean Demon Ox clan, the Mysterious Turtle clan, the Cloud Monkey clan, the Feather Spirit clan, and so on. He encountered danger repeatedly and obtained fortuitous opportunities repeatedly. When he entered the core ruins, he used the Tower of Endless to obtain the teaching Tao hymn left behind by the master of the core ruins. It was also at that time that he was able to obtain the inheritance of First Senior Brother, the Battle Saint technique, amidst the fierce competition between his opponents. Thinking back to the past, Lin Sun could not help but feel a little adrift. Young unknowingly, more than 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and he was no longer young. When I'm done with Fourth Senior Brother, I must return to the Xiao Empire to take a look. Lin Sun secretly made a decision. Suddenly, a noisy voice sounded from afar. "Don't panic, everyone. The entrance to the ultimate has been appearing for more than a month. According to the Tao Master, all living beings in the world will have the opportunity to enter the core ruins within 3 months and listen to the Tao Master expound the mystery of the Great Tao. How can there be such a good thing in the world? This is called good fortune. Let's go." Above the blue sea in the distance, many figures appeared. Some were riding spiritual birds, some were sitting on the back of huge sea sharks, and some were flying on treasures. There were more than 100 of them, including men and women. It was quite a spectacular scene. The leader was a sage-like old man in a black robe. He stepped on an ancient sword and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. He looked very natural and unrestrained. Lin Sun glanced over and immediately recognized the origin of these figures. In this sea area lived the survivors of the 10,000 primitive clans. They formed their own forces and survived to this day. When Lin Sun came here for the first time when he was young, he had witnessed the power of these survivors of the 10,000 primitive clans, such as Niu Tunshan of the Herculean Ox clan, Kong Xiu of the Cloud-Striped clan, Meng Lianqing of the Golden Phoenix clan, and so on. The figures whizzing over in the distance were obviously from the forces of the 10,000 primitive clans. They belonged to different clans and looked strange. When they saw Lin Sun standing alone on the blue sea, the black-robed old man and others were stunned, but they didn't feel too strange. During this period, the sea area near the ultimate was unprecedentedly lively, attracting countless strong practitioners every day. No one was willing to waste time after just taking a glance at Lin Sun. The black-robed old man and others left directly. Suddenly, a slender figure stopped and looked at Lin Sun with a pair of eyes, revealing a startled expression. This was a woman that wore a light golden dress. Her figure was extremely tall, her appearance was peerlessly beautiful, her skin was jade white like snow, her jet black and beautiful hair hung down to her slender waist, and her entire body emanated a breathtaking, proud, and icy cold aura. As she stopped, some of the people around her stopped as well. They crowded around her and asked her questions with puzzlement in their eyes. Miss Lianqing knows this person? They were also looking at Lin Sun. At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help but be a little startled as he recognized the beautiful woman's identity, Meng Lianqing. Back in the demon saint's secret realm, Meng Lianqing was incomparably dazzling among the saints, like a goddess with peerless charm. However, Lin Sun and she were rivals, and in order to compete for the battle saint technique, they even had an extremely fierce conflict. At that time, Lin Sun fought against many and successively suppressed Niu Tunshan, Xian Luozi, Graceful Kong, and other saints. After knowing that she was no match for him, Meng Lianqing chose to retreat. However, Lin Sun didn't expect to meet such an old friend as soon as he returned to the sea area near the ultimate. Lin Sun didn't know that after so many years, Meng Lianqing had already become an outstanding and dazzling figure among the 10,000 primitive clans. She was the first among the younger generation of the Golden Phoenix clan to reach the Quasi-Emperor realm. Her status was so high that she could stand shoulder to shoulder with those old monsters who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Over the years, among the 10,000 primitive clans, Meng Lianqing had become an existence that no major force could ignore. Coupled with her stunning appearance, she could be said to be a crane in a flock of chickens, and was regarded as a fairy by many young men. In fact, the young men with different expressions nearby were Meng Lianqing's admirers. They either had an extremely extraordinary background or had outstanding attainments in the Great Way. But at this moment, Meng Lianqing sometimes frowned, sometimes in a trance, and her clear eyes were also fluctuating, as if she was recalling the past. After a while, with a trace of doubt, she said, She came to the ultimate today, intending to listen to the Tao Master explain the mystery of the Great Way, but she didn't expect to see a familiar figure, which reminded her of the experience when she first entered the Demon Saint's secret realm many years ago. That experience was like a nightmare. Although it had already passed for many years, every time she thought of it, she still felt a kind of unwillingness and bitterness. "What's the matter?" Lin Sun asked. He didn't intend to reveal his identity. The dispute in the past, in his eyes now, was completely like a small quarrel, not worth mentioning. But now, although his strength was suppressed, both his appearance and appearance had a qualitative transformation from when he was young. If he didn't want to be recognized, even great emperors who were familiar with him wouldn't be able to do so. In the face of Lin Sun's clear and calm eyes, Meng Lianqing was a little hesitant and said, "I'm sorry, you look like an old friend of mine, I must have mistaken you for someone else. But may I know your name?" "Dao Yuan," Lin Sun casually said his Taoist name. "Dao Yuan? Sure enough, it's not him." Meng Lianqing was startled, as if relieved of a heavy burden, but also a little disappointed, her clear eyes enshrouded with subtle complex emotions. Chapter 24-23. Although the aura of this man called Dao Yuan was somewhat similar to that of the person in her memory, there was a clear difference. That person was arrogant and domineering. Although he was young, he was like the sun shining alone and had a heaven-defying killing power that could sweep through the crowd. Even when surrounded by a group of chosen, he was full of courage and acted as though no one was around. His entire person was like a peerless divine saber that could tear the sky apart and shine brightly. Back then in the demonic saint mystic realm, no one could compare to him and killed until everyone was terrified. But the Dao Yuan before her did not have that kind of style. He was too ordinary, like a cloud that could be seen at any time in the sky, without any edges or edges. Meng Lianqing also could not explain why she felt disappointed. Her emotions were subtle and complicated. According to common sense, she should have hated and rejected that youth from back then, but many years had passed and circumstances had changed. When she reached the quasi-emperor realm, she suddenly realized that the battles and killings back then were already a thing of the past. Only her heart still felt regret and unwillingness. Sorry for disturbing you. Meng Lianqing calmed herself down and looked away, her clothes fluttering in the wind. Those young talents hurriedly chased after her. If not for Meng Lianqing, they would not even bother to look at a stranger like Lin Sun. Lin Sun was unperturbed by this. He thought about how he had killed so many great emperors in the starry sky over the years, and how he had killed so many ancient orthodoxies that stood at the peak of the world. His power had long suppressed the starry sky and made people tremble in fear. Now that he was facing these people whose cultivation was only at the quasi-emperor realm, whether it was his state of mind or his knowledge, he looked down on them. Shaking his head, Lin Sun was about to head to the ultimate when a figure suddenly flew over from afar and greeted Lin Sun with a smile. "Brother Dao Yuan, are you also going to the ultimate to listen to Lord Dao Master expound on the mysteries of the great Dao?" As he spoke, he introduced himself. "I am Yen Wan of the Spirit Leaf clan." The Spirit Leaf clan was only a second-rate clan among the remnant forces of the 10,000 primordial races. Although Yen Wan was a chosen of the younger generation, his cultivation was only at the great saint level. "That's right." Lin Sun sized up Yen Wan and looked away. "Does Brother Dao Yuan know Fairy Meng Lianqing?" Yen Wan's eyes were filled with envy and even excitement. "She's one of the most dazzling beauties in the Soul Oblivion Ocean. It's hard for an ordinary clan leader to even meet Fairy Meng. She mistook me for someone else." Lin Sun shook his head with a smile. He finally understood that this guy took the initiative to talk to him because of Meng Lianqing. "Mistook me for someone else? Why didn't you mistake me?" Yen Wan had a look of disbelief on her face. "Furthermore, Fairy Meng is a quasi-emperor. Her eyes are as sharp as torches. Even if she mistook you for someone else, there must be another reason. In my opinion, brother, you might be in luck." "Lucky?" Lin Sun was stunned. Yen Wan said, "Brother, are you really muddle-headed or just pretending to be muddle-headed? That's Fairy Meng we're talking about. As long as you're in her good graces, with just a few pointers, your luck will change for the better and you'll be able to turn over a new leaf." His eyes and words were filled with envy. Lin Sun couldn't help but find it funny. He could see that Meng Lianqing was a goddess in this guy's heart, full of admiration and admiration. He didn't say anything more and flashed into the distance. "Brother, wait a moment." Yen Wan caught up with him. He seemed to be very familiar with Lin Sun. "Anyway, we're going to the ultimate. Let's go together. It'll be good to keep each other company." Lin Sun didn't reject it. He also happened to have a lot of questions to ask. "Can you tell me about the deeds of that Tao Master?" he asked. Although Yen Wan was a little confused, he happily told Lin Sun everything he knew. More than a month ago, the entrance to the ultimate appeared on the blue sea, causing a great sensation. Many cultivators entered it, but not only did they not encounter any danger, but they also heard the voice of a mysterious expert explaining the mysteries of the Great Way in front of the core ruins in the secret realm of demon saints. That mysterious expert called himself Tao Master, and claimed to know the mysteries of all Tao in the heavens. The reason why he explained the mysteries of the Great Way was that he would soon prove his Tao and leave. He didn't want his cultivation to be buried, so he planned to find a successor. Anyone who went to listen to his preaching would have the opportunity to be accepted as his successor and inherit his mantle. In the beginning, everyone was doubtful, but as they listened to the Tao Master explain the mysteries of the Grand Tao, no matter who it was, all of them obtained great gains. Some experts even directly broke through while listening to the Grand Tao. Thus, it spread like wildfire, and in less than a month, all the survivors of the primeval race that resided in the depths of the soul oblivion sea found out about it, and it caused a great stir. In the recent period of time, countless cultivators had swarmed over here, and it caused the ruins of End to become extremely bustling. As time passed, there were more and more rumors about this Lord Tao Master. Rumor has it that he was an ancient emperor that possessed the power to cover the heavens and earth. His cultivation was so profound that it could shake the ages. There were also rumors that said the Tao Master was the owner of the core ruins, and he was a supreme existence that could roam proudly through the universe and shake the heavens since the primeval times. As she finished speaking, Yan Wan's expression was covered in fervor and adoration. She said, "I didn't come here with the hope of becoming the Tao Master's personal disciple, but it's enough so long as I can listen to his teachings." He didn't notice at all that a wisp of imperceptible coldness had suffused Lin Sun's expression at this moment. What Tao Master? Lin Sun had a strong premonition that this fellow was probably his fourth senior brother, Ling Xuanzi. As for choosing a successor, it was complete nonsense. After all, Ling Xuanzi was still suppressed beneath the core ruins, so how could he have the mood to choose a disciple? He caused such a great commotion and attracted countless living beings to listen to his teachings. If this Tao Master is really fourth senior brother, then what's his objective for doing all this? Lin Sun's eyes surged. No matter what, I must eliminate this disaster that betrayed the sect this time. As they spoke, the rumbling of water resounded from afar, and it shook the heavens and the earth like a thunderclap. A large abyss had appeared above the blue sea in the distance. The abyss in the sea. As far as the eye could see, the seawater from all directions surged into the depths of the abyss like a myriad of streams returning to the source, and it caused terrifying rumbling sounds. That scene was exceptionally grand. A great abyss appeared in the middle of the ocean, devouring the seawater in all directions. It was immeasurably deep, as if it was the entrance to a mysterious world. Compared to this abyss, even the sun and moon seemed tiny, whereas the treasured vessel was like a grain of sand when it approached it, and it seemed even more inconspicuous. This was Ruin's End. According to legend, every single river in the myriad of worlds and even the water of the Milky Way in the depths of the universe would converge within the mysterious and primitive ruins of End. It was said that at the beginning, Chunguishu was surrounded by 5 divine mountains, namely Yingzhou, Peng, Lai, Fanghu, Daiyu, and Yuanjiao. Every divine mountain was 30,000 li in diameter, and the distance between the mountains was 70,000 zhang. The top of the mountain was connected to the Sea of Stars, and the bottom was connected to the 9 underworlds. "We're here," Yan Wan said excitedly. Lin Sun's eyes were filled with emotions. When he first came to the sinkhole, he was still a youth. Now, he was completely different. The flowers were the same every year, but the people were different every year. In the sea near the sinkhole, there were already many figures rushing over. There were hundreds and thousands of them, and all of them were filled with anticipation and excitement. They formed dazzling divine rainbows and rushed in. Lin Sun saw the experts of the Dragon Whale clan, Xian Ao clan, Yun Ho clan, Li Mu clan, Blood Lion clan, and other familiar clans. However, almost all of them were unfamiliar faces. Without any delay, Lin Sun set out as well, and Yan Wan followed closely behind him. The conversations they had all along the way caused him to feel that this friend called Dao Yuan was really not bad. Dao Yuan was warm-hearted and warm, and it made him feel as if he was bathing in the spring breeze and felt like a bosom friend. He did not know that if the great emperors in the starry sky knew of this evaluation, they would be dumbfounded. That Dao Yuan emperor, whose hands were stained with the blood of the great emperors, was warm? Very warm? What a joke! The ruins of End was one of the 4 great Dao ruins. Rumor had it that it included many secret realms and mysterious forbidden areas. Just like the Kunlun ruins, no one knew how big the ruins of End was since ancient times. The Demon Saint's secret realm was just one of them. Of course, the Demon Saint's secret realm was just what the outside world called it. Now, Lin Sun already knew that the Demon Saint's secret realm should be called the secret realm of Fangsuan. This was because a long time ago, the sect and foundation of Fangsuan Mountain's orthodoxy were entrenched in it. After entering the ruins of End, Lin Sun stepped into the Demon Saint's secret realm for the second time. The power of the Great Way Law that was originally suppressing him also disappeared, allowing his cultivation to return to the 4th level of the Emperor realm in an instant. However, in order to avoid alarming others and attracting unnecessary trouble, Lin Sun still concealed his aura below the Emperor realm. Yan Wan, who had been following Lin Sun all the way, was completely unaware of this. This is the Demon Saint's secret realm of the ruins of End? Yan Wan exclaimed. Mountains rose and fell, and the world was vast. It was filled with a primitive and ancient aura. The world was enshrouded in thick and surging chaotic spiritual energy. The grass and trees were all crystal clear and flowing with treasure light. It was like a holy land where the gods lived. Obviously, it was Yan Wan's first time here. Lin Sun looked around, and all kinds of past experiences came to his mind. After identifying the direction, he flew straight forward. Brother, where are you going? Yan Wan hurriedly chased after him. To listen to the teachings of the Tao Master, of course, Lin Sun said casually. Seeing that Yan Wan was catching up, he thought about it and finally slowed down. He hadn't been here for many years, so there was no need to be in a hurry. You know the way? Yan Wan was surprised. Lin Sun nodded, but did not explain. At this moment, he seemed to be aware of something, and looked into the distance. Yan Wan couldn't help following his gaze and saw a graceful and beautiful figure. It was Meng Lianqing and the others. Yan Wan suddenly understood. Yes, as long as we follow Fairy Meng's footsteps, we will definitely not go wrong. Many years ago, Fairy Meng once entered the ruins of End, and it is said that she obtained a lot of good fortune. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. This guy was really good at thinking, and actually thought that he was going to act with Meng Lianqing, Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24-24. At the same time, Meng Lianqing also noticed Lin Sun. She was startled for a moment before withdrawing her gaze. A complicated expression appeared on her beautiful face. After entering the ultimate, she couldn't help but recall the past. She couldn't help but think of the scene where she was defeated by that person. Now that she saw Dao Yuan, a man who was similar to that person, she was no longer as calm as before. Taking a deep breath, she turned around and looked at Lin Sun. My friend, we meet again. Why don't we go to the core ruins together? Everyone nearby was stunned. They had never seen Meng Lianqing take the initiative to invite someone of the opposite sex over all these years. Especially the young men around Meng Lianqing. They all frowned, but they still maintained their proper demeanor. However, the way they looked at Lin Sun already carried a trace of suspicion and hostility. Yan Wan was already excited. Her eyes shone as if she was even more excited than Lin Sun. She said, Brother, do you remember what I said just now? Your luck is about to change. Lin Sun's lips twitched imperceptibly. He was a peerless great emperor. Did he need to rely on a woman to change his luck? But before he could reply, Meng Lianqing had already taken the initiative to walk towards him. Her pale golden dress fluttered in the wind, and her skin was as white as snow. Her beautiful eyes were hazy as she stared at Lin Sun. Her red lips opened slightly as she sighed faintly. My friend, please don't blame me. It's just that you're very similar to that old friend of mine. If it wasn't for the fact that you don't have his arrogant and domineering demeanor, I would have thought it was him standing in front of me." Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. No wonder it was said that a woman's intuition was incomparably terrifying. They hadn't seen each other for so many years, but Meng Lianqing had almost recognized him. At the same time, Lin Sun noticed that numerous divine senses were like shapeless spiderwebs that enveloped this area around him, and it seemed to be a type of silent warning that told him not to have any improper thoughts towards Meng Lianqing. Otherwise, the consequences would be extremely severe. If it was somewhere else, Lin Sun would be able to kill the owner of these divine senses with just a slight display of his power as an emperor. But this was the ultimate after all. Lin Sun didn't intend to cause any trouble before he figured out the background of this Tao Master. Of course, you can't be that person. If it was him from back then, being stared at by so many divine senses, he would have revealed his might long ago and suppressed everyone. Meng Lianqing's voice carried a trace of disappointment. These words made the owners of the divine senses feel somewhat uncomfortable. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Fairy Meng, who is that person you're talking about?" Meng Lianqing said casually, "You should have heard of him before. Many years ago, when the bottomless ruins opened, this person single-handedly dominated the demonic beast mystic realm and caused countless bloody massacres. Niu Tunshan of the Herculean Bull Demon clan, Kong Xiu of the Cloud Monkey clan, Xian Luozi of the Xian Ao clan." She spoke a string of names, and every single name caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble and their expressions to change. Because every single one of those names could be said to be existences that could sweep through the soul oblivion sea. In the end, Meng Lianqing said, these people were all defeated by him back then. If it wasn't for the protection of the life-soul-bone talisman, I'm afraid, they wouldn't have been able to walk out of the bottomless ruins. At the end, her beautiful eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor, as if she was whispering, back then, he alone suppressed all the heroes and no one could defeat him. But in her heart she sighed, he is still my nightmare, like a shadow that can't be driven away. Lin Sun! Someone exclaimed. For a moment everyone was agitated. Everyone's expression changed. They finally realized who Meng Lianqing was talking about. Although many years had passed since what happened back then, among the 10,000 ancient clans, who didn't know the demon god Lin, who once defeated all the heroes? A group of saints with dazzling halos were all suppressed by him. This matter caused a lot of commotion back then. But now, Meng Lianqing said that the man in front of her was a bit like Lin Sun, so the expressions of everyone present changed subtly. Lin Sun listened and watched quietly. He couldn't help but feel strange. It had been so many years, but there was still someone in the soul oblivion sea who remembered him? This was out of Lin Sun's expectations. I've always wanted to defeat him. Otherwise, whenever I think of what happened back then, I can't help but feel depressed and unwilling. It's like a nightmare. Meng Lianqing's beautiful eyes stared at Lin Sun, and she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when she saw his indifferent expression. It's a pity that you're not him after all. But no matter what, meeting you today made me realize that if I don't get rid of this nightmare in my heart, it will very likely affect my future cultivation. That's why I'm telling you so much. Lin Sun said, that person probably doesn't care about these things anymore. Miss, you should take it easy. To be honest, if he hadn't returned to the bottomless ruins this time, he would have almost forgotten about this Fairy Meng, who was the center of attention. Meng Lianqing restrained her emotions and smiled. You don't understand. Let's go to the core ruins together. With that, she turned around and walked forward. Lin Sun didn't refuse, and he walked forward as well. Yan Wan, who was so excited that her cheeks were flushed, hurriedly followed him. She gave Lin Sun a thumbs up and made a "brother, you're good" gesture, and he followed obediently at the side. His eyes were filled with admiration, infatuation, and fanaticism as he looked at Meng Lianqing's beautiful figure. It was the first time he followed behind the goddess he admired so closely. The young talents who'd always been around Meng Lianqing couldn't help but look at each other when they saw this, and their gazes towards Lin Sun became even more vigilant and repulsive. It was as if they saw him as a rival in love. Lin Sun was calm and composed, and he turned a blind eye to them. How could he possibly care about these small fries? If he did that, it would simply be lowering his status, and if word of it spread out, he would be the laughingstock. After all, it really wasn't nice to bully a group of small fries with the status of a peerless great emperor. Fortunately, these young talents were all proud of their extraordinary status. Although they wished for nothing more than to drive away this eyesore Lin Sun from Meng Lianqing's side, they still maintained a corresponding demeanor on the surface. Along the way, wherever Meng Lianqing went, the eyes of all the strong people along the way would be attracted by her. This was Meng Lianqing's current prestige and fame. She was extremely talented and elegant, just like a fairy descending to the mortal world. She was destined to attract countless people's attention. As for Lin Sun, who followed beside her, he also attracted a lot of attention, but most of them were surprised and puzzled. It seemed that they couldn't figure out the identity of this strange man who could walk side by side with Fairy Meng. But most people directly ignored Lin Sun. With Meng Lianqing's presence, her elegance was destined to overshadow others. This was also the first time since Lin Sun returned to the mortal world that he'd accidentally become a foil. If the big shots on the starry sky ancient road knew about this, they would definitely laugh to death. But Lin Sun still maintained a calm and composed attitude, as if in his eyes there was only heaven and earth and all things, but no one was worthy of his attention. This time returning to the Demon Saint's secret land made him keenly find that it was completely different from before. He didn't encounter any danger along the way. It seems that in order to attract people to listen to Tao, he also spent a lot of effort. Lin Sun was lost in thought. The closer they got to the core ruins, the more cultivators they met on the way. In the end, there were dazzling escape lights everywhere, whistling forward like rain. After observation, to Lin Sun's surprise, there were some senior figures who had entered the Emperor realm among them. Since when did the Emperor realm appear in the mortal world? This discovery was unexpected to Lin Sun, and he was extremely surprised. After all, this was the mortal world. In the past, not to mention the Emperor realm, even the quasi-emperor could be said to be in existence like a dragon in the sky, like a legend. However, when he thought of Do So and the old priest in the Xiao Empire, Lin Sun vaguely felt that perhaps during these years that he was away, some great changes had occurred in the mortal world that he wasn't aware of. While he was thinking, an ethereal sound of a bell suddenly resounded in the distance, reverberating in the sky and revealing a solemn feeling that calmed the heart. The figures who were originally hurrying along stopped talking, and their expressions became serious, even with a sense of piety, as they looked into the distance in unison. On the ground, there was a huge lotus-like mountain range, surrounded by 49 towering mountains, towering and magnificent, bathed in sacred chaotic qi. On the other hand, in the sky above the mountain range that was shaped like a lotus, there was a figure with his back towards all living beings. He sat high above in the 9 heavens, and his entire body was coiled with a myriad of strands of auspicious light and divine radiance. He was like a god of ancient legend, and he'd become the most divine existence beneath the sky. The core ruins, Tao Master. In an instant, countless figures, including Meng Lianqing, revealed a look of shock, as if they had seen the ruler. And when he arrived here, Lin Sun's heart also fluctuated. In the past, he, Old Toad and Zhao Jingxian climbed this mountain, and it was also here that he obtained the inheritance of the core ruins and the inheritance of the Dozhan Emperor. Now that he returned, the lotus-like mountain was still there, but compared to the past, there was a so-called Tao Master. Lin Sun looked over, and at a glance, he noticed that the figure sitting high in the 9th heaven with his back to all living beings was merely a projection of the will. Could it be my 4th senior brother? "Brother, quickly find a place to sit down," Yen Wan said quickly. Lin soon turned his head and saw that the figures who had rushed over had found a place nearby and sat cross-legged one by one. The region closest to the sacred mountain was already filled with people even before they arrived. They were densely packed and covered the ground like a black tide. The number of people was more than 100,000. The world was solemn and the atmosphere was tranquil. Everyone sat cross-legged with devout and serious expressions, and they were listening to the voice from above the ninth heaven expounding on the great Tao. In a trance, it seemed as if they had returned to the primeval times, and there was a Tao ancestor who had established a Taoist field and sat down to teach all living beings. Bursts of bell ringing, like the sound of nature, resounded between heaven and earth. What it described was the subtle meaning of the great Tao, and every word was like a gem, deafening to the deaf, and went straight to the heart. Everyone's cultivation was different, and their comprehension was different. But when they listened, they all gained something. Some showed an intoxicated look, some showed a thoughtful look, some were in a trance, some were beaming with joy. Lin soon noticed that even some Emperor Realm figures were solemn and devout, listening attentively and meditating. Lin Sun was astonished by the scene. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24-25. Lin Sun looked around, sat down casually, and became one of the countless devout believers. The figure with his back to all living beings was still expounding the profundities of the Great Way. The solution to the Great Way is nothing more than enlightenment. However, the Great Way comprehended by all living beings in the world is not the same. It's like a mountain that looks like a ridge from the side and a peak from the side. We cultivate wholeheartedly on the Great Way, but we're often obsessed with the Great Way. How can we solve such a problem? Different people have different methods. In my opinion, the ultimate goal of seeking the Great Way is to transcend the Great Way and experience the Great Way. Only in this way can we not be burdened by the Great Way. The grand voice was like a morning bell and evening drum, and it went straight to the heart. The words weren't obscure, but it caused people of different cultivation realms to have different understandings. After listening for a while, Lin Sun had to admit that the Tao Master's knowledge and understanding of the Great Way had simply reached a shocking level. Even an ordinary Emperor Realm figure was probably unable to expound the subtleties of the Great Way in such a shallow, direct, and simple manner. The Great Way was the simplest. Expounding the Great Way was the same. The more obscure and complicated it was, the more it was unable to point to the essence of the Great Way. On the other hand, this Lord Tao Exalt was deeply skilled in the principle that the Grand Tao was the simplest. The profundities of the myriad of Taos in the world were easily comprehended by him, and he explained them one by one in an extremely interesting manner. Moreover, he was often able to give others a feeling of being filled with wisdom. It was no wonder that some Emperor Realm figures would lie dormant and sit here devoutly like disciples listening to the teachings of their masters. They listened like this for a few hours. The number of cultivators around the core ruins was increasing, and none of those who had been listening to the Great Way were willing to leave. Up until now, Lin Sun hadn't noticed anything wrong. Because the Tao Master's expounding wasn't a trick to bewitch people, but a real teaching and dispelling doubts. But this puzzled Lin Sun. An existence with such a profound attainment in the Great Way was expounding the secrets of the Great Way to those cultivators who came here day and night. What was his purpose? Was it really as he claimed, that he wanted to choose a successor before he left to prove his Tao? Nearly 24 hours later, Lord Tao Master suddenly said, "In these 10 days, those who have been listening to the Great Tao can enter my courtyard and continue to listen. Remember, those who have not listened to the Great Tao for 10 days are not allowed to act on their own. Otherwise, I will expel them." As soon as he finished speaking, voila! In the originally silent and solemn area, a tide of people surged out like water. The dense mass of figures stood up excitedly, and their gazes were devout and fervent as they looked towards the same direction. At the same time, Lin soon saw that in front of the huge lotus-shaped holy mountain, there was a colorful corridor leading to the depths of the holy mountain, which looked extremely mysterious. The crowd that stood up seemed to be fighting to be the first to rush into the tunnel. Regardless of how many people entered, they would immediately disappear. On the other hand, the other cultivators that didn't possess the qualifications revealed envious expressions, and they seemed to wish for nothing more than to follow closely behind Chen Shi. Lin Sun's black eyes were surging. "What are you doing? Brother, you don't even know this?" Yan Wan was surprised. Meng Lianqing, who was sitting not far away, said, "Lord Dao Sovereign has stipulated that anyone who can listen to the Dao for 10 days will be able to enter Lord Dao Sovereign's courtyard and have the right to be selected. An opportunity to become a direct disciple. Since the Lord Dao Sovereign explained the Grand Dao a month ago, there have been at least 300,000 cultivators who have entered the courtyard. Supposedly, listening to the Grand Dao in the courtyard will allow one to obtain unimaginable benefits. Even if one isn't selected as a personal disciple in the end, the benefits one obtains are absolutely beyond imagination." Her clear eyes carried a trace of yearning and anticipation as well. This can be considered to be a form of selection during the selection of a personal disciple. No one would give up such an opportunity. Hearing Meng Lianqing's explanation, those young talents nearby all looked at Lin Sun with sarcasm in their eyes. It seemed that they didn't expect that this guy named Dao Yuan didn't even know these things and came here to listen to the Great Way. It was too ignorant. Of course, they felt it was even more unfair in their hearts because they'd never imagined that Meng Lianqing would personally explain for such an ignorant person. It was simply too enviable. Lin Sun didn't care about all of this at all, and he couldn't help but be shocked in his heart after he heard Meng Lianqing's explanation. Almost 300,000 cultivators have already entered the courtyard? Lin Sun asked, "Miss Meng, do you know if anyone has walked out of the courtyard during this period of time?" Meng Lianqing was stunned, and then she shook her head and said, "I don't think so." At this moment, a wave of roaring laughter resounded in the surroundings. What a joke! Being able to enter Lord Dao Sovereign's courtyard is a fortune that any cultivator dreams of. Unless one is expelled, only an idiot would leave. "Brother Dao Yuan, aren't you a little too ignorant? Ignorant and ill-informed. I really don't know why Fairy Meng would think highly of a person like you." Those young geniuses had a belly full of rage since a long time ago, and they'd seized this opportunity to ridicule Lin Sun. They seemed to intend to fiercely suppress Lin Sun and make Meng Lianqing completely disappointed in Lin Sun. However, to their astonishment, Lin Sun hadn't said anything when he suffered such ridicule when Meng Lianqing frowned and said, "Everyone, this is Lord Dao Sovereign's place. Aren't all of you afraid of offending Lord Dao Sovereign by making such noise?" Everyone was speechless while their expressions changed indeterminately, and they felt even more indignant in their hearts while the gazes they shot at Lin Sun grew even more hostile. However, Lin Sun disregarded them once more. His brows knit together tightly as he acutely noticed that something was off. Even if it's to choose an inheritor, why would a few hundreds of thousands of cultivators be allowed to enter the unknown courtyard? What kind of secrets were hidden within the sect courtyard? In the distance, the cultivators that stood up and left quickly vanished, and the passageway that overflowed with multicolored flowing lights vanished along with them. On the other hand, the figure that sat high up in the sky with its back towards all living beings started to expound on the profundities of the Grand Tao once more. In next to no time, all the cultivators were immersed within it, and the atmosphere was solemn and peaceful. Only Lin Sun frowned while his dark eyes flickered. If it was possible, he wanted to go take a look at the so-called courtyard right now. It was too strange. The ultimate continued to open, and the demon saint's secret realm was completely free of danger. Countless cultivators came in droves, just for the sake of listening to the profundities of the Grand Tao. All of this seemed solemn and peaceful, but Lin soon knew very well that Shi Tiandi had just left this place with injuries a few years ago. Moreover, a monstrous genius that could be called an eternal genius was suppressed beneath the core ruins, Ling Xuanzi. My young friend, the situation isn't good. Suddenly, the lawless bell that had shrunk to the size of a pinky and hung on the tip of Lin Sun's hair spoke abruptly. I sense that the energy of all living beings in the core ruins is being sacrificed. The energy of all living beings in the core ruins is pouring into a seal. I suspect that all of this is Ling Xuanzi's plan. He seems to be using the energy of the sacrifice to break the seal that's suppressing him. Sacrifice? Lin Sun's heart shook. If that's really the case, doesn't it mean that hundreds of thousands of cultivators have lost their lives here in merely a month? Oh no, he sensed my reaction. The lawless bell's voice was filled with alarm. Right at this moment, the voice that was expounding on the Grand Tao suddenly stopped. At the same time, a will that was filled with supreme dignity swept silently towards Lin Sun. My young friend, why are you the only one who was absent-minded when I was expounding on the Grand Tao? The sonorous voice resounded. All the cultivators who were immersed in listening were stunned, and they raised their heads in bewilderment. They didn't understand what was going on. Moreover, many gazes looked towards the area where Lin Sun was. The expressions of Meng Lianqing and the youths nearby changed, and they felt uncomfortable all over. What's going on? Right in this oppressive and bewildered atmosphere, Lin Sun stood up, and his tall figure instantly attracted the attention of countless gazes. His dark eyes were deep as he looked at the figure that sat high up in the sky, and he said indifferently, "Your Grand Tao is bullshit to me. Why should I let it dirty my ears?" Whoosh! At this moment, everyone present was shocked, and countless people were dumbfounded. Never had they imagined that there would actually be someone in this world who dared to evaluate the Grand Tao that Lord Tao Master was expounding on. It was simply crazy. Yan Wan, who had been sitting on Lin Sun's side, was also completely dumbfounded, and his soul almost jumped out of his body. This was the Taoist field of Lord Tao Master. How could Brother Daoyuan? How could? He suddenly grabbed the corner of Lin Sun's clothes and stammered, "Brother, quick, apologize to Lord Tao Master, quick!" His face was pale and his mind was in a daze. How could Lord Tao Master, who was admired by countless people, be slandered and humiliated like this? At the same time, Meng Lianqing was also stunned. She didn't expect that this seemingly ordinary man would say such nonsense. And the youths around her also looked as if they had seen a ghost. Was this guy crazy? Immediately afterward, the whole audience became restless. Countless cultivators seemed to be irritated and shouted one after another, "How dare you? How dare you be so presumptuous? Kneel down and apologize to Lord Tao Master. Who is this man? Which tribe does he belong to? He's so arrogant. How dare you regard Tao Master's Tao as nonsense? You deserve to die." All kinds of angry voices exploded like a pot, resounding through the world, making Lin Sun the target of thousands of accusations and curses. "Brother! Hurry up, apologize. Don't you want to live?" At this moment, Yan Wan didn't stay out of the matter, but anxiously persuaded Lin Sun, which surprised Lin Sun a little. He thought in his heart that after solving the matter here, he could give this man a good fortune, so that he wouldn't be disappointed in his protection. "Bastard, kneel down and apologize." In the midst of the crowd's indignation, a figure rushed over and raised his hand to pat Lin Sun's shoulder. It was a red-robed old man in the quasi-emperor realm. Among the remnants of the 10,000 primitive tribes, he could be regarded as a big shot. Seeing him make a bold move, the others were stunned at first, and then immediately understood that he wanted to show off to Lord Tao Master and take this opportunity to claim credit. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24-26. Suddenly, many experts in the field were ready to take action. In their view, if they could kill Lin Sun, the heretic, they might be able to win the favor of the Tao Master, and maybe they would soar to the sky. Kneel down. The red-robed man roared with awe-inspiring righteousness. He had already rushed to Lin Sun, but his figure was still in the air. As Lin Sun raised his eyes, he glanced at him. Bang! The red-robed old man, together with his divine soul, was shattered into countless pieces, exploded into blood mist, and dissipated in the void, frightening the people nearby to scream. At this moment, countless people in this world were astonished. They were shocked by this bloody scene. A quasi-emperor! In today's soul oblivioncy, he could be regarded as a giant below the emperor realm. As the saying goes, if the emperor realm did not appear, the quasi-emperor would be respected. But now, he just died in the void after being glanced at. It was so simple, so easy, and he died just like that? Many people were stiff and confused, thinking that they were dazzled. The whole field was silent. Those who were ready to take action also felt cold in their hearts, and their expressions changed. Everyone was dumbfounded, especially Yan Wan, Meng Lianqing, and those young talents beside Lin Sun, who couldn't believe what they saw. A quasi-emperor was killed in such a bizarre way, and the most terrible thing was that it happened under the eyes of the Tao Master. It should be known that in the hearts of these cultivators, the Tao Master was like a god in heaven. Who dared to do such an offensive thing? But Lin Sun seemed to have no scruples at all. You're just going to stand there and watch? That person just now jumped out to die in order to protect your dignity. And in this shocked and silent atmosphere, Lin Sun said indifferently with his hands behind his back, "Who will help me to kill this evil?" Above the ninth heaven, the figure with his back to all living beings never looked back, only uttered a loud voice. As soon as the voice died away, "I will. Tao Master, please calm down. I will kill this heretic." A few figures stood out, and every single one of them was stronger than the last. Their entire bodies suffused with the pressure of an Emperor Realm expert, and it swept towards the surroundings like a tsunami. It caused a wave of chaos in the surroundings, and many cultivators were shocked to the point of dodging. At this moment, Yan Wan was terrified to the point of collapsing onto the ground. She recognized these figures. They were all Emperor Realm monsters that hadn't appeared for a long time. Every single one of them possessed a heaven-overflowing might that suppressed the world. Meng Lianqing's expression changed. She stared at Lin Sun as if she was trying to identify something. The young men around her all panicked. They got up and moved away from Lin Sun one after another, for fear that they would be affected if they got too close to Lin Sun. "Fairy Meng, get out of the way quickly. This god of plagues doesn't want to live anymore. You can't be affected by it." "Miss Lianqing, quickly dodge." These young prodigies spoke one after another, revealing anxious expressions. "Dodge it." Lin Sun glanced at Meng Lianqing, and his voice was indifferent. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve, and Meng Lianqing and Yan Wan were both teleported away. Meng Lianqing seemed as if she'd awoken from a dream, and her gaze was complicated. Only now did she realize that she'd been deceived. This ordinary and mediocre fellow was able to send her away without her noticing. How could he possibly be an ordinary person? But was he the same person from back then? A total of 6 Emperor Realm figures had already swept over, and their eyes were cold. One of them, a white-haired man in a black robe, scolded coldly, "Evil creature, how dare you make trouble here? Even if Tao Master doesn't say anything, I won't spare you." His voice rumbled and stirred the whole place. The pressure of an Emperor Realm expert disturbed the wind and clouds, making countless people gasp in shock. Lin Sun ignored him. In these years, he had killed countless Emperor Realm existences. Even the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm were uprooted. How could he care about the provocation of a few Emperor Realm experts? He looked at the figure in the distance and said, If they die, you will lose a lot of power when you sacrifice them. Don't you care? Or are you planning to use these people to test my strength? Sacrifice? Many people were confused. Die. At this time, the white-haired man in a black robe took the lead to attack. He released the pressure of an Emperor Realm expert. Boom. His 5 fingers stretched out and grabbed the air. The terrible Emperor Realm Law was shining brightly and turned into a huge palm to cover Lin Sun. But Lin Sun only said one word softly, "Get lost." One word, but it made the world chaotic. The densely packed figures in the field were shaken to the side. Blood spurted from their mouths and noses, and they saw stars in front of their eyes. The huge hand that enveloped Lin Sun suddenly burst into pieces, and the black-robed, white-haired man seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. His body was shaken and sent flying backward, smashing the void into pieces. He flew out for an unknown number of meters before finally falling to the ground. His body was already bloody and broken, and his internal organs were all cracked. He let out a painful scream. The other Emperor Realm experts who were about to attack saw this and felt as if they were struck by lightning. Their hands and feet were cold and their souls almost left their bodies. Just one word, and he had severely injured an old monster in the 3rd level of the Emperor Realm. This was unheard of and unseen. The originally solemn and silent world was now in a mess. It was extremely chaotic, and every single person's face was filled with astonishment. That was an Emperor Realm expert. How could he be defeated so badly? The eyes of the young talents, who were hiding far away, almost fell out of their sockets. They were completely shocked. Some people's teeth were chattering, and they were terrified out of their wits. All along the way, they'd ridiculed and rejected Lin Sun on more than one occasion. Who would have dared to imagine that such an ordinary young man would actually possess such world-shaking might? Meng Lianqing was stunned on the spot, and her heart trembled. Earlier, she'd suspected that Dao Yuan was that person from all those years ago. But now, she didn't dare be sure. Lightly speaking the tune of the Dao and heavily injuring an Emperor Realm expert. Even if it was that person from all those years ago who'd cultivated for a few tens of years, it would probably be impossible for him to accomplish this, right? The surroundings were in chaos, and cries of shock and shock resounded throughout the surroundings. Right at this moment, Lin Sun's imposing aura that he'd always restrained swept out. Bang! The heavens and the earth trembled while the grand Tao rumbled. The clouds in the surroundings collapsed. Lin Sun seemed to have become a completely different person. His tall figure flowed with the glow of the Tao and was coiled by divine radiance. As he stood there casually, he seemed mighty like a god from beyond the heavens, lofty, and awe-inspiring. At this instant, the surroundings were deathly silent. All the cultivators were terrified, and even the imperial emperors gasped while their scalps went numb. The oppressive force that assaulted their faces caused their hearts to palpitate, and they felt like they were suffocating and about to collapse. In fact, this wasn't Lin Sun releasing his aura on purpose, but it was a type of aura that he naturally emanated at his current cultivation level. This was the aura of Great Emperor Ju-in. It was an aura that he'd tempered after killing countless imperial emperors with his own hands and tempering his imperial bloodline and imperial mandate. When mortals saw him, it was like seeing a god, and they could only prostrate themselves before him. When cultivators saw him, it was like seeing the ruler of the Grand Tao, and they could only look up to him. Amidst this deathly silent atmosphere, the figure that sat cross-legged in the sky with his back towards all living beings finally turned around slowly. His figure was enveloped by boundless glow of the Tao, and he was dazzling like the scorching sun in the sky, mighty and boundless. At this instant, the eyes of all the cultivators present here felt a piercing pain, and they couldn't open their eyes. The Lord Tao Venerable had turned around. The surroundings were deathly silent, and the hearts of countless people surged as if they'd seen hope. "We're ashamed of our inferiority, and we're unable to capture our opponent. I hope the Lord Tao Venerable can forgive us. An Emperor Realm strongman showed a look of shame. Please, the Lord Tao Venerable, suppress this bastard. Another person spoke and begged. The Lord Tao Venerable directly ignored these emperors, and looked at Lin Sun with his eyes that were as bright as the sun, and his voice was loud and full of joy. Lin Sun, Lin Daoyuan, the 50th successor of the mind formula, the only lotus that Master has been waiting for thousands of years, it's really you. Let me guess, it's second senior brother who sent you here, right? Junior brother? His voice seemed very happy, and it rumbled between heaven and earth. His words caused everyone present to be dumbfounded. Junior brother? The guy who suddenly appeared and regarded the Tao Venerable as nonsense was actually the junior brother of the Tao Venerable? The emperors who had begged the Lord Tao Venerable before turned green and were completely at a loss. Lin Sun, it's really you. At this moment, Meng Lianqing suddenly opened her beautiful eyes as if she was struck by lightning, and she stared at Lin Sun's figure. There was relief, shock, and indescribable complexity in her expression. She wanted to get rid of the shadow in her heart. But now she found that this shadow was like a brand, and it was difficult to get rid of it. This made her even have no strength to refuse. Only an indescribable sense of loss was left. She probably didn't expect that after so many years, she thought she had the power to surpass Lin Sun. Who would have thought that Lin Sun had already reached a height that she could only look up to and couldn't reach? Lin Sun. Those young talents were also dumbfounded, and they all felt like collapsing. Of course, they knew how terrifying that person was, but they didn't expect that when they met again, he could already treat emperors like ants. For the rest of their lives, they would probably live in fear of being dominated by Lin Sun. As for Yen Wan, she had already fainted a long time ago. How can a traitor like you call him junior brother? Lin Sun said indifferently, back then, Master spared your life and let you repent here, turn over a new leaf, and rebuild your state of mind. But you didn't repent and became obsessed with obsession. You even revealed second senior brother's inheritance of the Great Way to Shi Tiandi. You deserve to die. Become obsessed with obsession? Ling Xuanzi, who had transformed into Lord Tao, smiled. Junior brother, you can't speak of such things carelessly. It's the first time we've met, so let's not discuss those old matters. Otherwise, if these cultivators hear it, it will damage the reputation of our mind mountain. What do you think? Lin Sun said indifferently, I think that if you atone with your death now, you can preserve the reputation of Mind Mountain. Ling Xuanzi let out a long sigh. It seems that you have a deep prejudice against me, junior brother. Did second senior brother tell you that I, Ling Xuanzi, was suppressed here because I went astray? Wrong. As he spoke, Ling Xuanzi stood up from his cross-legged position, and the light of the Tao spread out from his body, illuminating the heavens and the earth, causing him to seem arrogant and proud. The reason I was suppressed all those years ago was because Master and I had different views towards the Great Way. Otherwise, why didn't Master kill me but only suppress me? After being pointed out by Star Cluster Galaxy's disciple, Meng Lianqing has already received a bento box earlier. This is not a very serious bug, but here, I still apologize to everyone. Fortunately, Meng Lianqing is just a middleman and won't affect the main plot. She will disappear soon. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24-27. The Struggle for the Great Way. Ling Xuanzi's words seemed extremely disdainful and even arrogant. At that time, he was just a disciple, but he dared to clamor that it was because of the dispute between him and his master. How arrogant! Based on these words alone, Lin Sun concluded that it was impossible for Ling Xuanzi to have any repentance during the countless years of being suppressed, and it was impossible for him to turn over a new leaf. Lin Sun's voice was cold. Ling Xuanzi, I just want to ask you, did you leak the second senior brother's inheritance of the Great Way to Shi Tiandi? Ling Xuanzi smiled and said, "Little junior brother, you came here with prejudice, so you probably know nothing about the past. Aren't you going to ask who heavily injured that old geezer, Luo Yunshi?" Lin Sun frowned. Luo Yunshi must be the real name of Shi Tiandi. To be honest, he really didn't know how Shi Tiandi was injured. Ling Xuanzi let out a long sigh when he saw this. "Little junior brother, this is the first time we've met, so I hope you'll put down the prejudice in your heart. You must not allow prejudice to blind your state of mind." Lin Sun's black eyes surged and said, "Do you think I'm here to talk about right and wrong with you? But at least, you know very little about the past," Ling Xuanzi said, "and I believe that you must have a lot of doubts in your heart. Even if you want to kill me, you don't have to be in a hurry." Lin Sun said, "What do you want?" Ling Xuanzi smiled indifferently and suddenly made a grand Dao sound. "Today, I, Ling Xuanzi, will discuss with my junior brother here. No matter who wins or loses, I'll let you open your eyes and see whose great way is better." Every word resounded through the world like the sonorous voice of the Great Way. "What?" All the people present were stunned as if they couldn't believe it, and then they all became excited. In their hearts, Tao Master was like a supreme ruler that they could only look up to and revere. Before this, Lin Sun had already proved his terrifying and boundless combat strength through the means he revealed. Coupled with the fact that Tao Master personally acknowledged him as the little junior brother, this made everyone realize that it was absolutely a great fortune for them to be able to witness such an unparalleled Tao discussion with their own eyes. As for what kind of benefits they could reap, it had long been forgotten. What a joke! Being able to witness such an unprecedented battle with one's own two eyes was already a blessing that cultivators in the world couldn't even hope for. The emperors were filled with excitement and anticipation. Meng Lianqing, Yan Wan and others couldn't help but be stunned. Since Tao Master said so, didn't it mean that Lin Sun was qualified to discuss Tao with him? Thinking that Lin Sun had reached such a level in cultivation after decades, they felt like they were in a trance in a dream. Sparring? At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help raising his eyebrows. "Exactly. I found out a long time ago from Luo Yunshi that you possess heaven-defying natural talent, and you're taken to be the escaped one amongst the disciples of Mount Innerheart. Even Master waited for an eternity before a disciple like you arrived. This is sufficient to prove that in the eyes of Master, the grand Tao that little junior brother possesses is the grand Tao that he wishes to see the most." After a pause, Ling Xuanzi continued, "As for me, I don't think so. All those years ago, I was suppressed here for countless years because of the battle for the grand Tao. Now, if I can defeat you in the sparring, then it's sufficient to prove one thing. That is, Master was wrong all those years ago, and the grand Tao that I, Ling Xuanzi, pursue is the true supreme grand Tao." As he finished speaking, his words were filled with disdain, confidence, and absolute conceit. These were his heartfelt thoughts. Even though he was suppressed for countless years, he never thought that the grand Tao that he pursued was wrong, nor did he think that he had gone astray. All of this was nothing more than a battle for the grand Tao. Sooner or later, he would personally look for Master and prove it to Master with his own grand Tao. He would make Master personally admit how wrong his views were all those years ago. Now, the first person he wanted to conquer was this little junior brother who had escaped one of the 49 heavenly divination. The surroundings were deathly silent. After saying that, Ling Xuanzi waved his sleeve, and all the cultivators near the core ruins, regardless of their cultivation level, were teleported far away. Only Lin Sun, who was standing in front of the mountain, and Ling Xuanzi, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky, were left in the empty space. The two brothers faced each other. The atmosphere was oppressive. At the same time, in a mysterious canyon far away from the core ruins, Old Toad, dressed in a golden robe, danced with joy. "It's Big Brother! Big Brother must be here to save us! Ha 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 ha!" Oh my God, are we finally going to leave this godforsaken place? Alu also shouted with a grin. It's indeed, Master. Little Silver crossed his arms in front of his chest and smiled brightly. On his shoulder, the demonic sky-split butterfly fluttered its wings happily. Don't celebrate too early. That guy who calls himself Lord Tao Master has already proven how terrifying his cultivation is by expounding on the Grand Tao. Even though Lin Sun is now an emperor, it won't be easy for him to win this sparring match. Only Ah who had a trace of worry in her starry eyes. Although she, Old Toad, Alu and the others hadn't been able to walk out of the canyon, they could still hear the voices from the outside world. When the Lord Tao Sovereign started to expound on the Grand Tao for the first time, all of them listened at the first possible moment. Up until now, even they felt that they'd benefited greatly from it, and they often felt as if they'd been enlightened. Moreover, they felt reverence towards the Lord Tao Sovereign. But when Lin Sun appeared, they suddenly realized that although this Lord Tao Master was Lin Sun's senior brother, they were clearly enemies. Unfortunately, this canyon was filled with obscure Grand Tao restrictions that made it impossible for them to transmit their voices out. They could only feel anxious in their hearts. Since Big Brother dared to come, he must be very confident. Ahu, you don't have to worry too much. Old Toad was in high spirits and full of confidence. Although I don't like this kid sometimes, I have to admit that he never fights a battle he's not confident in. This time will definitely be no exception. The big black bird strolled over from afar, still carrying a big black pot on his back. He looked sneaky and naturally had a wretched charm. Ahu was about to say something when there was a commotion outside. She, Old Toad, Alu, Little Silver and the big black bird immediately held their breaths and listened attentively. You can prove Master wrong by defeating me? Lin Sun sneered in front of the core ruins. This Ling Xuanzi was clearly paranoid and had great resentment in his heart. He couldn't be bothered to say more and said directly, Ling Xuanzi, how do you want to discuss Tao? Junior brother, are you impatient? Ling Xuanzi smiled calmly. It's very simple. Since it's a battle of the Grand Tao, you should naturally fight with your own cultivation. I won't bully you. We'll start from the lower 5 realms, then the Longevity Realm, the Sage Realm, the Quasi-Emperor Realm, all the way to the Jew Emperor Realm. There are 5 major realms in total. That's 5 rounds of Tao discussion. As long as you can win once, I'll answer one of your questions. If I lose in the final 5 rounds of Tao discussion, then I'll be at your disposal, junior brother. At this point, monstrous divine flames surged in Ling Xuanzi's eyes, and he looked disdainfully like a god. If you lose in the end, I won't make things difficult for you. I just need to leave behind a portion of your inheritance. The rules weren't complicated. The final outcome of the 5 rounds of Tao discussion was destined to be decided. Countless cultivators in the distance couldn't help but tremble when they heard this. The reason why Lord Taishan proposed such a unique method of discussion was obviously to suppress Lin Sun in the different realms of the Grand Tao, so as to show that his path of Tao was indisputably superior. Lin Sun said after hearing this, "You want me to leave behind an inheritance?" He really didn't expect Ling Xuanzi to make such a request. "Don't worry, I'm not coveting your inheritance," Ling Xuanzi said indifferently. Instead, he has to wait until he meets Master in the future to prove that the lotus he has been waiting for is nothing more than this. Lin Sun realized that at the bottom of it all, Ling Xuanzi's heart was filled with resentment towards his master, and it was resentment that couldn't be resolved even after being suppressed for countless years. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Everyone was astounded. As far as they were concerned, Lin Sun's tone seemed as if he was afraid that Lord Taishan would go back on his word, and it was too arrogant. After all, the rules of the Tao discussion were proposed by Lord Taishan, so how could he be afraid? "I'm sure." Ling Xuanzi's expression was calm, and he revealed absolute composure. "You won't go back on your word?" Lin Sun seemed to still be in disbelief. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but laugh, and he pointed at Lin Sun from afar. Junior brother, there's never been a fickle and despicable person among the descendants of Mount Innerheart, and I, Ling Xuanzi, am afraid that few can compare to me in terms of breadth of mind, boldness, and insight. Even if master and eldest senior brother are here, they can't find fault with me. Back then, when he was only 19 years old, on the eve of Zhu Ming becoming an emperor, he had once said in front of his master, the Master of Heart, that from today onwards, his great Tao would surpass his master. At that time, who in the entire Mount Innerheart would have the foundation and courage to say such words to his master? He, Ling Xuanzi, dared to. He dared to do what others didn't, not because he was arrogant, but because he had an absolute foundation. Although Zhong Qiu was conceited and proud, how could he compare to him back then? But now, this junior brother whom he had never met before suspected that he would go back on his word during the Tao discussion. This made Ling Xuanzi feel that it was ridiculous, and he couldn't help but feel a little sad and indignant. His eyes were deep. I can tell that those senior brothers and junior brothers have never said anything good about me, Ling Xuanzi, all these years. However, Lin Sun said indifferently, you've misunderstood this time. Those senior brothers and senior sisters can't be bothered to mention a word about you. If it wasn't for second senior brother telling me this time, how would I know that the so-called fourth senior brother is actually a traitor? Ling Xuanzi was stunned, and he lowered his head in silence. When he raised his head again, his expression was full of calmness, and he said calmly and casually, Junior brother, your prejudice against me is deeply rooted in your heart, and it can't be changed. But I believe that when you lose in the Tao discussion, you will feel guilty for what you said just now. Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 24-28. Lin Sun said indifferently, it's impossible for me to lose. Cut the crap and let's begin. Boom. The aura around him suddenly decreased, and was constantly suppressed until it revealed the cultivation of the reincarnation developing realm. Seeing this, Ling Xuanzi, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky, said, No, since I want you to be completely defeated in my Tao, I should naturally start from the most basic true martial realm. Lin Sun didn't waste any time and suppressed his cultivation to the true martial realm. At the same time, he looked at Ling Xuanzi. He was very curious about what the suppressed Ling Xuanzi would use to fight him. Little junior brother, there's no need to use my main body in the battle of Tao. I only need to use my Dharma form. As he spoke, Ling Xuanzi stood up and took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared 30 meters in front of Lin Sun. He smiled faintly. This is the power of my willpower and my cultivation. Feel free to attack. I guarantee that this will be the fairest battle. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura around him was suppressed as well, revealing the aura of the true martial realm. At this moment, the cultivators who were watching this scene couldn't help but widen their eyes. The true martial realm was the introductory realm of cultivation, and it was divided into 9 levels. This realm could lay the foundation of a cultivator's Tao. The 9 levels of the platform were built from the earth. Because this realm was too basic, some of the more profound cultivators rarely paid attention to the battle of this realm. If it wasn't for Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun's identities, they might not even pay attention to such a basic Tao discussion. Little junior brother, please. Ling Xuanzi said calmly. He stood casually, but his entire body revealed an aura that was compatible with heaven and earth and resonated with all things. Just this posture alone gave off a feeling of invulnerability. Lin Sun took a glance and punched out without hesitation. It was simple, direct, and even unreasonable. If Ling Xuanzi's aura was that of perfection, then Lin Sun's punch was like a punch that didn't put the Tao in his eyes at all. It was as if he wanted to break the cage and blast everything away. Ling Xuanzi's eyes lit up. He raised his arms as if he was hugging Tai Chi, and his body stretched out like a crane dancing in the air. It was ethereal and simple like the Tao. Bang! Lin Sun's punch was blocked. Countless fine cracks suddenly appeared on the ground beneath their feet, and smoke and dust filled the air. Lin Sun's punches were big and powerful. Every punch seemed to break the void, sink the mountains and rivers, and break the world. The strong fist wind burst out and rumbled. Ling Xuanzi countered every move and executed all sorts of profound techniques in a calm manner. In an instant, the two of them had already fought a few hundred times. The commotion wasn't huge, yet it was horrifying. It caused all the cultivators that were paying attention to this battle to reveal more and more solemn expressions. In the end, cold sweat broke out on their foreheads while their hearts shook. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that a true martial realm, the most basic realm, could actually produce such a heaven-defying power. No one was a fool. Compared to the strength they had grasped when they were in the true martial realm, the difference was like heaven and earth, completely incomparable. Even Emperor realm existences couldn't help but feel ashamed of their inferiority. The true martial realm was extremely common. However, at the hands of the two disciples of Fang Siyuan, they developed this state to an unprecedented state. This was simply incredible. Junior brother, if it weren't for the fact that Master didn't want me to go out to travel, I could be ranked in the top 3 since ancient times with my attainments in the true martial realm. While fighting, Ling Xuanzi spoke calmly, and his words were full of arrogance and conceit. How is it compared to senior brother Pu Zhen? Lin Sun asked. Ling Xuanzi narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, Junior brother Pu Zhen is a late bloomer. He spent 100 years on the path of the true martial realm, and I was only a 7-year-old child when I broke through to the peak of the true martial realm. But you're not as good as senior brother Pu Zhen. As Lin Sun said, a sharp light flashed in his black eyes. He bent his arm, stretched out his 5 fingers like a cage that covered the sky, and suddenly pressed down. Boom! The world seemed to be absolutely imprisoned and suppressed. Ling Xuanzi's pupils shrank, and he slapped back with his palm. Although he blocked the blow, he was shaken and staggered back a few steps. There was a burst of exclamation in the distance. No one had expected that Tao Master would show his weakness. At this moment, Lin Sun said calmly, and you are even worse than me. As early as in the world of samsara of nirvana heaven, he was at the peak of true martial realm and won the title of the first in all the heavens. It should be noted that before Lin Sun, Pu Zhen had always been the first. Ling Xuanzi didn't dare to say that he could win against Pu Zhen before, so how could he be Lin Sun's opponent? Interesting. Ling Xuanzi stood firm, looked at Lin Sun up and down, and said, You deserve to be my junior brother. Boom. The momentum around him changed, showing the cultivation of Gang's spirit realm, and his whole momentum became as sharp as a sword, dazzling. Come again. He pointed at everything with his palm, and a sword chi emerged. A rain of light flew, as vast as the sky, as if to oppress all living beings in the world. Lin Sun sneered, In this realm, you can't do it either. He stretched his body and displayed the cultivation of sea spirit realm. He didn't retreat, but rushed up to meet it. His palm and fingers formed a fist and broke through. The fist light and the sword chi collided, and dazzling light rain splashed in an instant. That's not necessarily true. Ling Xuanzi's long hair flew in the air, his eyes like a sword, and he was like a sword, bright and fierce to the extreme. But Lin Sun was also extremely strong, and he didn't want to give way. He rushed to fight. One was like a peerless monarch, manipulating the ultimate meaning of Sword Tao, and the other was like a heaven-shaking overlord, attacking with unparalleled power. Such a scene caused the countless cultivators in the distance to be astounded. It wasn't how amazing the power of Gang's spirit realm was, but no one could imagine that someone in Gang's spirit realm could deduce the cultivation to such a terrifying level. Boom! Not long after, Ling Xuanzi was shaken back by a punch, his clothes fluttering, his long hair flying backward, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Then, he calmed down. Again. He shook his body, and he had already deduced the power of Sea Spirit Realm. He rose into the air, his figure graceful, and his whole body was surrounded by frightening lightning. So what if I don't want to? No is no. Lin Sun sneered and jumped up. The two fought into the clouds in an instant. For a moment, lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and the wind and clouds surged. The dazzling genuine essence torrent swept out with great momentum. All the people in the distance were stunned. Martial Realm, Gang Spirit Realm, and now Sea Spirit Realm, whether it was Ling Xuanzi or Lin Sun, they had all shown heaven-defying power that was enough to shock the world. It was completely beyond people's imagination and subverted their previous cognition. But in contrast, Lin Sun's performance surprised them more. The reason was that Ling Xuanzi's supreme image of Tao Master had long been rooted in people's hearts. Before, no one thought that Lin Sun would be Ling Xuanzi's opponent. Even Meng Lianqing and others had no confidence in Lin Sun. But now, at least in Martial Realm and Gang Spirit Realm, Lin Sun's combat power was obviously better than Ling Xuanzi's. They couldn't even believe it. Boom! Above the sky, the battle became more and more fierce. It was like a fierce fight between a dragon and a tiger, and the sky was dark and the moon was dim. Again. Before the Battle of Spirit Sea was over, Ling Xuanzi let out a long roar and displayed the combat power of Tao Insight Realm. It's futile to struggle, Lin Sun looked indifferent, and his strength rose to Tao Insight Realm. Back then, he had reached the Grotto Heaven Realm in the sinkhole. But that was then, and this was now. As he reconstructed his path in the samsara world of nirvana, Lin Sun could be said to be invincible in all the heavens and throughout the ages. Boom! Not long after, Ling Xuanzi changed again and displayed the power of reincarnation developing realm. There was a trace of solemnity between his brows. He went all out and his figure flowed with extreme power. The Taoism he performed was earth-shattering and filled with infinite divine power. This was his last chance during the first round of the Tao discussion. But as the battle continued, as Lin Sun also displayed the power of reincarnation developing realm, the pressure on Ling Xuanzi increased. His heart was shaken, but he was still calm as snow. He displayed all his offensive means, and the power released by his every move was enough to easily crush all enemies of the same realm in the world. But this didn't include Lin Sun. No matter how strong and swift his attacks were, they were crushed by Lin Sun one by one, and he was unable to shake Lin Sun in the slightest. If Ling Xuanzi was said to be the ruler of the reincarnation developing realm, then Lin Sun was the king of rulers. Many cultivators in the distance were still at the reincarnation developing realm, and they were dazzled when they witnessed this battle. Their hearts rose and fell, and their entire bodies trembled from excitement. Even those with higher cultivations couldn't conceal the shock on their faces. Some seniors even felt chills run down their spines, and they felt that the reincarnation developing realm they cultivated all those years ago was simply like the light of a firefly, and it wasn't worth mentioning. Suddenly, along with a deafening rumble, Ling Xuanzi was almost struck down from the sky by a palm strike, and he seemed to be in a slightly sorry state. "Do you still want to fight?" Lin Sun withdrew his hand calmly, and only his black eyes were like bolts of lightning as they locked onto Ling Xuanzi. Ling Xuanzi heaved a long sigh of relief. After a moment of silence, he smiled as if nothing had happened, and he said, "I'm indeed inferior to little junior brother in the lower 5 realms." Whoosh! Countless people in the distance were agitated, and they looked at each other in dismay. Lord Tao Master actually admitted defeat just like that? In the canyon far away, Ahu, Old Toad, and the others who had been paying attention to this battle also felt relieved at this moment, and they looked at each other and smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. Lin Sun was still the Lin Sun from all those years ago, and he would never let anyone down. He actually defeated Lord Tao Master in the lower 5 realms. Meng Lianqing murmured, and she was a little absent-minded. The impact of all this on her was too great. As for those young talents who used to flock around her, they all felt bitter in their mouths and wailed in their hearts. They had actually offended such a terrifying fellow before. They were simply blinded by lard. "You're very self-aware, otherwise you would have lost miserably," said Lin Sun indifferently. Lin Sun spoke indifferently. His words were domineering and impolite. From the beginning to the end, he had no intention of being polite to Ling Xuanzi. Ling Xuanzi let out a long sigh. "Little junior brother, your words are really unpleasant. Since you've won, I'll answer the question you want to know the most according to our previous agreement." He looked up at Lin Sun, and he was as calm as before. "Speak." Chapter 24-29. Ling Xuanzi didn't seem to be affected by the previous defeat. But when he looked at Lin Sun again, there was a seriousness in his eyes that wasn't there before. It was as if from this moment onward, he'd finally taken this little junior brother to be a worthy opponent. Although he talked and laughed calmly before, his attitude was full of a condescending attitude. But now this attitude had undergone a subtle change. "Did you leak the second senior brother's inheritance to Shi Tiandi?" This was the question Lin Sun wanted to confirm the most. Sure enough. Ling Xuanzi smiled. His eyes were calm, and he said directly, "Yes, I used the second senior brother's inheritance in exchange for a chance to escape. It's very worthwhile." Lin Sun's eyes suddenly became extremely cold. "How can you say that it's a matter of course after doing such a betrayal? How shameless! Do you know that because of what you did, you almost killed the second senior brother?" "You're wrong." Ling Xuanzi looked calm. "I did this to kill many birds with one stone. First, it can help me get out of trouble. Second, I know the cultivation and details of the second senior brother better than you. Even if an old guy like Luo Yunshi obtained the second senior brother's inheritance, it's impossible for him to be the second senior brother's opponent. Third, if the second senior brother can win the battle with Luo Yunshi, he will definitely be grateful to me and not hate me." His tone was calm and methodical, and he seemed as if he was in control of the situation. "Little junior brother, the fact that you're able to come to the ruins of End proves that second senior brother has already suppressed Luo Yunshi. Otherwise, it's probably impossible for you to disregard his safety and come here to look for me. But the second senior brother obviously hasn't killed Luo Yunshi yet. I've long guessed that he hates me, but in the future, he will definitely change his opinion of me." After hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sneer. "So, you're still doing it for the good of the second senior brother?" His voice was full of sarcasm and coldness. Ling Xuanzi didn't take it seriously and nodded. "Although the suppression for countless years made me quite resentful, I have no intention of harming the sect from beginning to end. Isn't revealing the second senior brother's inheritance a disaster?" Lin Sun's voice became colder and colder. Ling Xuanzi replied with a question. "Then do you know who heavily injured that old geezer Luo Yunshi?" Before Lin Sun could speak, he answered. "Of course it's me. I've been the only person in the core ruins for countless years. Besides me, who else would stop that old bastard, Luo Yunshi, from destroying our core mountain?" At this point, he smiled playfully. "If I didn't heavily injure this old thing, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy for second senior brother to suppress him." After hearing this, Lin Sun said expressionlessly, "No matter how you argue, you can't change the fact that you have leaked the inheritance of second brother." Ling Xuanzi was stunned, and he seemed to be slightly disappointed. "Little junior brother, I entered the Saint Realm at the age of 9 and became an emperor at the age of 19. If I wasn't suppressed with my foundation, I would be able to stand above the emperors and ancestors in less than 100 years. It wouldn't be difficult for me to seize the eternal energy." His voice was filled with indescribable loneliness. He was a peerless genius, no one could deny this fact. but from the moment he became an emperor, he was suppressed here for countless years. No one knew what it meant for a genius like him who couldn't be measured by the secular world. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Shall we continue? Ling Xuanzi looked at Lin Sun, and his aura had already turned into the aura of an immortal king. It's just a discussion of Tao, but you divided it into so many rules. I'm afraid you don't have absolute confidence in defeating me, Lin Sun said indifferently. But Lin Sun said indifferently, if you insist on doing this, I will let you know what a complete defeat is. Boom. The aura around him suddenly changed. His black eyes were cold, and his long hair fluttered in the wind. He vaguely had an invincible and matchless demeanor. Complete defeat. Ling Xuanzi carefully thought about it, and his eyes were filled with brilliance. I'm afraid that you can't do it, junior brother. He leaped forward, and his aura rose steadily. He struck out with his hand, and suddenly thunderbolts fell from the void like a rainstorm, pouring down on the world. Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and the sky full of sword chi whistled out, surrounding his body, and rushed up. Boom! The battle erupted again, and the world shook as divine light rumbled. The two of them fought fiercely in the sky from time to time, and they fought on the ground from time to time. Every move they made could be said to be heaven-defying. More than half of the spectators in the distance had begun to feel tired, and they were unable to see the subtle mysteries of the battle. Only the cultivators above the immortal tribulation realm felt their hearts sway, and their bodies trembled in shock. For a time, it seemed as if a battle between the supreme kings was taking place in front of the core ruins, and the mysteries of the 9 levels of the immortal tribulation realm were released to the extreme. Even Lin Sun had to admit that this fourth senior brother was indeed extraordinarily heaven-defying. His state of mind, willpower, Tao, power, all of them could be said to be amazing and heaven-defying. But for Lin Sun, all of this was still not enough. Boom! A quarter of an hour later, as Lin Sun attacked with all his strength, Ling Xuanzi was directly blasted away, and the void collapsed while turbulence splashed everywhere. How is this possible? The second battle. Lord Tao Master lost again? How could this be? Countless uproars resounded in the distance. Everyone's face was covered in shock and disbelief. At this moment, Ling Xuanzi's supreme status in their hearts had started to waver. Meng Lianqing, Yan Wan, and the others were stunned as well. The scenes they'd witnessed earlier were like a landslide and a tsunami, and it gave an extremely great impact to their hearts and overturned their perception and understanding. The Lord Tao Master actually lost twice in a row? This was something that no one had imagined. Good. Ling Xuanzi praised in the battlefield. There was actually no dejection, unwillingness, or anger on his face, and he seemed to be even more composed and composed. You've already lost twice in the 5 battles. You'll really lose if you lose again. Lin Sun's expression was similarly indifferent, and he was neither sad nor happy. Ling Xuanzi smiled. The rarest thing in cultivation is to find an opponent that can compete with me, and little junior brother didn't disappoint me. Lin Sun frowned. You talk too much. Let me ask you, why did you take advantage of Master's absence to try to force the other senior brothers and sisters to acknowledge you as their master through the Tao discussion? Ling Xuanzi shook his head. I only wanted them to acknowledge my Tao and let them know that on Mount Fengtsuan, apart from Master, my Tao is the most respected. I didn't want to force them to be my servants like you said. Lin Sun said, You're really arrogant. Ling Xuanzi smiled. That's because I have the strength, and my Tao is destined to surpass the heavens. Lin Sun couldn't be bothered to argue anymore, and he said directly, Then let me tell you, with me here, your Tao is destined to not have the chance to surpass the heavens. Boom. The aura around him changed, and it revealed the aura of the Saint Realm. Let's begin. Ling Xuanzi smiled, and the aura around him rose to the Saint Realm as well. When I was 9 years old, I made a great wish when I entered the Saint Realm. In the future, all living beings in this world will see me as if they're seeing the heavens. I'm very curious, what's your great wish, little junior brother? As he spoke, he had already made a move. He stretched out his hand and grabbed, and the power of heaven and earth seemed to be drawn and transformed into a Tao sword. Buzz! The Tao sword rumbled, carrying the might of heaven and earth, and it contained the power of all directions. For a moment, Ling Xuanzi seemed like a ruler who controlled the heavens. You want to know? Lin Sun asked. Of course, Ling Xuanzi said leisurely. I'm stronger than you anyway. Lin Sun's words stunned Ling Xuanzi, and then he laughed. Only children would say such things when they quarrel. Lin Sun's answer was a straightforward attack. Boom! His figure moved around the void, and his body glowed. Tao sounds rumbled, and his aura was like an abyss. As he waved his sleeve, Tao light was like an ocean that covered the sky. You're really impatient. Ling Xuanzi smiled and shook his head. He took a step forward as if he was stepping on the stars, and he swung his sword to kill. From the beginning to the end, the two of them fought with their own cultivation, and they used the Tao they had mastered to deduce the battle. For a moment, it was as if two peerless sages were debating. The Tao sounds were boiling, the Tao light was like a tide, and all kinds of incredible phenomena appeared between heaven and earth. When the sages in the distance saw this, their Tao hearts were shaken, and they felt powerless and powerless. When the quasi-emperors saw this, they were also shocked. When they thought of their attainments in the sage realm back then, they couldn't help but feel ashamed. The emperors felt a chill down their backs, and they broke out in cold sweat. The higher one's cultivation was, the more they knew that if there were any flaws on the path of Tao in the past, it was destined to become obstacles in the future. It was also at this moment that they realized that although their path of Tao in the past wasn't bad, it was definitely not top-notch either. As for the experts below the sage realm, they had long been unable to see through the mysteries of the Tao at this level. True Sage Realm. Great Sage Realm. King Sage Realm. The battle between the two became more and more intense, and the Tao and power they displayed had long exceeded everyone's imagination. Not to mention the spectators, even those peerless figures on the ancient path of the starry sky were destined to be shocked. But in the end, Ling Xuanzi was still defeated in the third round. He was crushed to the ground by Lin Sun's supreme might, and the ground cracked and dust swept up. He seemed to be in a sorry state. The audience was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Countless cultivators who were watching the battle were stunned at this moment, and their eyes widened as if they couldn't believe that the Tao Master, in their hearts, was defeated again in the third round of the Tao discussion. In this oppressive and silent atmosphere, Ling Xuanzi stood up from the ground and casually dusted off his clothes. With a calm expression, he looked at Lin Sun, who was not far away, for a long time, and then suddenly grinned and said, "It's really an unprecedented lotus. No wonder Master was willing to wait for so many years. Little junior brother, what do you want to ask now?" His words were also calm and casual, without any trace of anger, frustration, loss, and unwillingness, as if being defeated 3 times in a row didn't affect him at all. Just this unshakable state of mind seemed extremely terrifying. "You've been completely defeated." Lin Sun's black eyes were clear as he said calmly, "And according to the rules you said before, from now on, you're at my disposal." Genius 1 Second Remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 2430. The world fell into a deathly silence. Countless cultivators were shaken. Even if they couldn't accept it, they had to admit that Lin Sun had won 3 out of the 5 Tao sparring matches. Ling Xuanzi said with a smile, "But the 5 sparring matches aren't over yet. You still want to continue?" Lin Sun raised his brows. Ling Xuanzi said indifferently, "Little junior brother, didn't you want to show me what complete defeat means on the path of Tao?" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure exuded the aura of a quasi-emperor, and his eyes surged with profound Tao light. "Fine, then I'll make you accept your defeat wholeheartedly." Lin Sun leaped into the air. Boom! The curtains to a battle between peerless quasi-emperors had been drawn. The battle was even more intense and shocking than before. The world in front of the core ruins was in a state of great turmoil and chaos. Everyone's hearts thumped in fear and shock. The martial emperors also held their breaths and couldn't conceal the shock between their brows. They weren't martial emperors or quasi-emperors. In fact, they hadn't even witnessed the power of quasi-emperors before. It was also at this moment that they realized that the insurmountable martial emperor chasm of ancient times couldn't stop Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun at all. Both of them possessed heaven-defying power that couldn't be measured with common sense. Their combat strength was terrifying, and the aura they displayed had long surpassed ordinary martial emperors. It was undoubtedly too terrifying. If word of this spread, it could even overturn the understanding that had existed since ancient times. In this battle, Ling Xuanzi had already started to be injured. However, unlike before, he didn't admit defeat. Instead, he became more courageous and his battle intent surged. Boom! In the void, Ling Xuanzi roared as he manipulated the power of the void and performed all sorts of profound techniques like a god. His expression was unprecedentedly calm and solemn, while his eyes surged with terrifying light. Every strike of his possessed the power to burn mountains and boil oceans. It was unimaginably terrifying. However, no matter how powerful his attacks were, they were all defeated by Lin Sun. What profound techniques! What Tao! They were all crushed. Compared to Ling Xuanzi, Lin Sun's every move displayed the power of the simplest Tao. It was simple and direct, but it was impenetrable and indestructible. Before long, Ling Xuanzi was riddled with injuries. This was a figure formed from his willpower. It wasn't bleeding, but anyone could see that his figure was a bit damaged and blurry. People were in a daze. Lord Tao Master, who was like a supreme ruler, was really going to be knocked off the altar? Why don't you admit defeat? Are you too ashamed to admit defeat? Lin Sun asked. Ling Xuanzi's eyes surged with monstrous battle intent, but his expression remained calm. I haven't lost yet, so why should I admit defeat? Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, he was blasted away by Lin Sun, and his figure was rolling in the Taoist light. But even then, Ling Xuanzi seemed to be completely indifferent, and he attacked once more as soon as he steadied himself. Lin Sun frowned. Since the beginning of the battle, the heaven-defying strength that Ling Xuanzi displayed had forced him to use his full strength to suppress him. This also proved that Ling Xuanzi was far from being a ruthless character in the ordinary sense. However, Lin Sun really couldn't figure out why Ling Xuanzi could persist at this time. Along with the passage of time, the battle situation became more and more tragic. Ling Xuanzi's figure was already blurred and broken, but he still persisted, appearing extremely tenacious. It wasn't that Lin Sun didn't want to suppress him in one fell swoop, but even with his full strength, he couldn't defeat Ling Xuanzi at all. A monstrous character who could be said to be unrivaled throughout the ages was destined not to be completely suppressed so easily. It's too tragic. In the distance, many people were worried. These days, Ling Xuanzi's elaboration of the profound Tao had benefited them greatly. Now that they saw him in trouble, they couldn't help but worry for him. As for Meng Lianqing and the others, they only had one feeling now. Was that guy really the Lin Sun they knew? Even Lord Tao Master could only struggle to hold on, so how terrifying was his combat strength? No one knew that as early as in the world of Samsara in Nirvana Heaven, Lin Sun had already become the number one person in all the heavens from the lower 5 realms, Longevity Realm, Saint Realm, and Quasi-Emperor Realm. Under such circumstances, how could Ling Xuanzi have a chance to win? In the valley far away, Hu, Old Toad, Alu, and the others all held their breath and waited nervously. They already knew that Ling Xuanzi had been defeated, and there was no possibility of turning the situation around. But what they were worried about was what if Ling Xuanzi went back on his words. With Ling Xuanzi's cultivation, if he really revealed it completely, Would Lin soon be a match for him? Boom. In the battlefield, Ling Xuanzi was defeated once again. His figure was completely blurred, as if it would disappear at any time. In fact, everyone could see that Ling Xuanzi couldn't hold on any longer. At this moment, he let out a long sigh and decisively stopped. But listening to his long sigh, there was no loss, bitterness, or unwillingness. Instead, there was a kind of indescribable satisfaction. This was simply unbelievable. How could he still have such an abnormal reaction when he had already been defeated to such an extent? Extraordinary. Little junior brother, this grand Tao of yours is indeed unprecedented in this world. Ling Xuanzi's voice was full of emotion. Lin Sun frowned. You still have the mood to be emotional at this time? Ha! Ling Xuanzi laughed. I'm extremely happy and gratified to be able to witness little junior brother's Tao with my own eyes even if I've lost. This was like the most unreserved praise from a senior brother to a junior brother, and it was full of sincerity. But at this moment Lin Sun seemed to realize something, and his black eyes narrowed slightly. You've been trying to figure out my Tao path in the previous discussion? Ling Xuanzi was stunned, and then he smiled brightly and praised. Little junior brother, your eyes are like torches, but you're wrong. I'm not trying to figure it out, but I've already thoroughly seen through your previous Tao path, and understood it clearly. After thinking for a while, he said, according to my deduction, you should have recultivated your previous Tao path more than once, but only the recultivation before becoming an emperor is the most crucial. After a pause, Ling Xuanzi continued, if I'm not wrong, the place that can allow you to recultivate might be Nirvana Heaven, right? Lin Sun's heart was slightly cold, and his eyes were flickering. Ling Xuanzi was actually able to see through so many things just through the discussion of Tao. This fellow was too terrifying. He suddenly recalled something the lawless Bell had once said about Ling Xuanzi. Innate wisdom, 9 orifices in the heart, a sea of consciousness like a lotus, extraordinary talent, and unparalleled throughout the ages. Lin Sun couldn't help but suspect that Ling Xuanzi's ability to possess such heaven-defying insight was probably related to his talent. Looks like I'm right. Ling Xianzi smiled in an extremely easygoing manner. No matter what, I have to thank little junior brother this time. Your path towards the Tao allowed me to finally understand what sort of Grand Tao Master was waiting for, and after I saw through your Grand Tao, I can already. He turned around and looked at the core ruins, and he said word by word, escape. As soon as he finished speaking, bang! At this moment, the enormous divine mountain that was shaped like a lotus suddenly shook violently, and the radiance that covered the sky surged while the surging chaotic chi poured down like a tide. It gave others the feeling as if a god had awoken from its slumber beneath the mountain, and it intended to overthrow the divine mountain that was pressing down on it and reappear in the world. Countless astounded exclamations resounded in the distance, and it was restless and chaotic. No one had expected such a shocking change to occur after the 4th round of the Tao discussion. So, you've already planned this out. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep as he stared at the core ruins in the distance. He could clearly sense that there was a boundlessly terrifying aura awakening beneath the divine mountain. This isn't a scheme. Even if little junior brother hadn't come, I would have been able to escape from this imprisonment for countless years in less than 2 months. Ling Xuanzi spoke indifferently. His words were casual, but there was a hint of absolute conceit in them. Lin Sun said, I've been wanting to ask you about this. You sacrificed those innocent cultivators just to escape? Ling Xuanzi retorted, little junior brother, I'm afraid the number of people you've killed along the way is already inestimable. Perhaps you have your reasons for killing, but isn't it the same for me? We're both killing people, and there's no difference between us. Lin Sun laughed out of extreme anger. I, Lin Sun, have a clear conscience in everything I've done since I started cultivating, and I've never done anything that's against reason or cruel or bloodthirsty. What about you? You sacrificed hundreds of thousands of lives. The expressions of countless cultivators in the distance changed, and they felt a chill run down their spines. They'd vaguely realized what Lin Sun was talking about. When they looked at Ling Xuanzi once more, their gazes carried terror and disbelief. They seemed to be unable to imagine how the Lord Tao Master that they revered like a god would do such a bloody and cruel thing. Rumble! In the distance, the divine mountain shook violently while divine radiance swept through it, and it seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Ling Xuanzi seemed as if he hadn't noticed the rage of Lin Sun and the countless cultivators in the distance, and he said indifferently, "Little junior brother, they're living beings in your eyes, but in my opinion, they're merely dust on the grand Tao. It's even to the extent that we're no different than dust now. Only by standing above the grand Tao and attaining eternal might one be able to truly become the ruler of the heavens and the supreme exalt of the heavens." As he finished speaking, his eyes were filled with fervor, and he sighed with emotion. "This is the competition between me and Master for the grand Tao all those years ago. Perhaps I'm inferior to Master now, but sooner or later, I'll prove to him whose great Tao is superior." Lin Sun suddenly calmed down. Looking at Ling Xuanzi's blurry figure that was about to disappear, he said, "Do we still need to wait for the future? Don't forget that you've already lost 4 battles, and you said that it's all up to me. Are you going back on your word now?" Ling Xuanzi was stunned, and then he smiled. "No, Ling Xuanzi, never go back on my word. Even if I've been suppressed for countless years, have you ever seen me go back on my word?" He paused for a moment and said word by word, "Little junior brother, don't panic. The 5th round hasn't begun yet." As he finished speaking, this strand of will incarnation collapsed into a rain of light that vanished without a trace. At the same time, the towering divine mountain in the distance. It suddenly collapsed. Genius 1 second remember site address. Mobile version Chapter 2431. The divine mountain collapsed, and the earth trembled violently. Roiling mist spread out like a tide, sweeping through the heavens and the earth. It was the core ruins that had existed since the ancient times. Even though the mountain gate had been destroyed, it still hadn't been completely destroyed. The glory of Mount Heart had been recorded here, and every bit of cultivation of every successor of Mount Heart was imprinted here. But now, everything had been reduced to ruins along with the collapse of the divine mountain. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. Monstrous rage surged in his heart. Ling Xuanzi had been scheming from the beginning to the end. Countless cultivators in the distance trembled, and their faces turned ghastly pale. Many of them had realized that the situation wasn't good, and they fled in panic, not daring to stay any longer. They had a premonition that it was very likely that an immeasurable battle between emperors would unfold next. At this moment, even the martial emperors had solemn expressions on their faces as they retreated again and again. They knew better than anyone else that a battle between martial emperors would result in the destruction of the mountains and rivers that would be unleashed. Not to mention that both Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun weren't ordinary emperors. No one was willing to be affected, and if they wanted to watch the battle, they could only hide far away. Ling Xuanzi is simply too cunning. He's been scheming against Big Brother since the beginning. In the canyon far away, Alu was extremely furious. The expressions of Ahu, Old Toad, Big Blackbird, and Little Silver changed indeterminately. They'd heard everything that was going on outside, so how could they not know that Lin Sun and Ling Xuanzi had been completely used in the discussion of Tao? In fact, even they didn't dare to imagine that Ling Xuanzi could actually see through the secrets of Lin Sun's Tao through a mere discussion of Tao. This was undoubtedly too terrifying, and it sent chills down their spines. The dust dispersed, and a figure appeared in the ruins of the core ruins. He wore a green robe, and his appearance was delicate like that of a young man. His black hair was tied casually behind his head, and there was a faint smile on his lips. He was as handsome as jade, and he was clear and unrestrained. Anyone's eyes couldn't help but light up when they saw him. What a handsome young man! He stretched his body and spread his arms. He squinted his eyes and looked up at the sky. His face was filled with greed and intoxication. Countless years of suppression. Countless years of darkness and suppression. Finally, at this moment, he saw the light of day again. Boom! The heavens and the earth trembled while the clouds in all directions collapsed. The torrents of the Grand Tao were like a flood that had burst a dam, and they descended from the sky and surged madly into the body of the young man in green clothes. One could see with the naked eye that the aura around his body continued to rise and skyrocket. His handsome face faced the dazzling light of the way and looked extremely dazzling. In the distance, countless creatures were overwhelmed with shock. Just looking at it from afar made them feel an indescribable fear. It was like an ant meeting a god. Between heaven and earth, Lin Sun stood still and stared at the young man in the green shirt in the distance. He had to admit that this guy's demeanor was rare in the world. The world is always cruel. Some people were innately favored by the Grand Tao. They were talented and possessed the favor of the heavens. They possessed extraordinary natural talent and innate wisdom. As soon as they were born into the world, they already possessed heaven-defying natural talent that far surpassed all the cultivators in the universe, and they glowed brilliantly. On the other hand, Ling Xuanzi was undoubtedly a top existence amongst such people. Merely the words "one of the greatest throughout the ages" was sufficient to show how terrifying his natural talent was. It wasn't until a long time later that the movement between heaven and earth calmed down. Looking at Ling Xuanzi, who was dressed in a green shirt and looked like a handsome young man, his whole body was filled with Taoist light. He was outstanding like an immortal in heaven, as if he didn't belong to this world. He slowly withdrew his gaze from the sky, dusted his clothes, and turned to Lin Sun with a bright smile. "Junior brother, thank you very much." Lin Sun snorted coldly. "Do you really think you're free? I've been suppressed for thousands of years. Aren't you happy for me at all?" Ling Xuanzi sighed. Who could understand the torture and suffering in the endless darkness? Immediately, he adjusted his expression and walked towards Lin Sun with a smile. "You asked me before if I would go back on my words, and my answer is absolutely not. I know very well that you definitely hate me to the bone. But it doesn't matter. In the 5th round of the Tao discussion, your senior brother will tell you why I used the method of Tao discussion to conquer the other senior and junior brothers." He walked very casually as if he were strolling in a courtyard. He didn't stop until he was 3,000 meters away from Lin Sun, and he smiled brightly. "How about it? Do you dare to give it a try? Conquer me?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Ling Xuanzi nodded. "I'll subdue you and let you deal with me. That won't be considered going back on my word, so it won't be considered breaking the rules. But at that time, I believe that you'll definitely feel guilty and apologize to me." Lin Sun couldn't help laughing, and he looked Ling Xuanzi up and down. 4th level Emperor realm? That's the only way to be fair. Ling Xuanzi said leisurely. "Junior brother, don't worry. If I'm no match for you in the same realm, I'll be at your disposal." His words were casual and powerful. Lin Sun's eyes revealed a hint of mockery. "By now, I'm completely disappointed in you." Boom. The originally oppressive world seemed to be unable to bear the terrifying pressure emitted by the two, and it suddenly collapsed like a glass mirror. At this moment, Lin Sun and Ling Xuanzi made their moves at the same time. Boom. Lin Sun stepped in the void and punched out. The simple and unadorned force of the fist shattered the sky and created a rift that was 3 kilometers long, and it revealed an all-powerful and indomitable might. The people in the distance couldn't see it anymore. To them, such a terrifying emperor aura was like the wrath of the heavens, and it was extremely terrifying. Even those in the emperor realm felt their hands and feet go cold, and their scalps go numb as they paled. It was just a single punch, but it already showed the supreme elegance of the world. Confrontation. It was different from Lin Sun's domineering punch. Ling Xuanzi stretched out a finger that was fine like jade and swiped it through space. The divine rays of the Grand Tao that covered the sky whistled up like a myriad of strands of sword qi. Every single strand of sword qi was a profound and unfathomable Emperor Tao law, and they contained different supreme profundities of the Grand Taos. Go! Ling Xuanzi pointed. Thousands of sword qi, like the sharpest divine arrows in the world, rushed towards Lin Sun, and each sword qi bloomed with different terrifying power at this moment. Some were like bolts of lightning, swift and violent. Some were like the wind and fire, wanton and violent. Some were as majestic as a mountain, solemn and majestic. Some, every single sword intent revealed a supreme aura that blotted out the sky and engulfed the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Bang! Bang! Countless sword qi slashed down and slashed on Lin Sun's domineering fist energy, producing a deafening sound of collision. However, Lin Sun's fist energy was so domineering that it once killed an 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator on the Starry Sky ancient path. How could these sword qi block it? Along with the explosive sound, the fist crushed the torrent of sword qi with unstoppable momentum. Countless sword qi exploded, turning into a rain of light and dissipating. Rise! Ling Xuanzi's expression remained unchanged as he pointed with his palm. The torrent of light and rain of sword qi that had been crushed suddenly had an incredible change. It turned into divine chains and whipped Lin's fist strength fiercely. Every time it whipped, Lin's fist strength would be weakened a little. After countless lashes, Lin's fist strength was weakened a little. After countless lashes, Lin Sun's fist energy was finally dissolved when it was 10 meters away from Ling Xuanzi. All the people in the distance were stunned. It was the first time the two fought. It was just a single blow, but the Emperor Tao that was displayed was simply shocking and unimaginably terrifying. Lin Sun's fist energy was simple, but it had an invincible momentum. The countless sword qi of the Grand Tao that Ling Xuanzi casually summoned displayed the Tao of extreme changes, and it was profound, unfathomable, and soul-stirring. However, this was just a casual blow from the two. When the two of them went all out, what kind of terrifying power would it be? Controlling all Taos and knowing all technique. Your Emperor Tao seems to be nothing much. Lin Sun sneered. His body was like an abyss, shining brightly. He punched out again. The world was like a canvas that was crushed and collapsed under this punch. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure was like a ruler, like an immortal cauldron, like a great abyss that swallowed the sky. His cultivation was truly released at this moment. The power of the Tao that was refined to the extreme caused the world to tremble and the sun and moon to roll. In an instant, the terrifying scene of the myriad of worlds and the 3,000 Grand Taos collapsing beneath a single punch actually appeared. Even Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but reveal a trace of solemnity on his face. Without hesitation, he clenched his right hand in the void. Clang! A 3-foot-long sword qi surged out from the spiritual platform above his head. The sword qi was magnificent and contained the mysteries of the Tao. As the sword qi flowed, mysterious Tao diagrams appeared. The countless mysterious Tao diagrams were condensed from a variety of supreme techniques. When the 3-foot-long sword qi fell into Ling Xuanzi's palm, the power around him changed as well. It was like a celestial emperor wielding the sword of nature and patrolling the heavens. Boom! The entire world was illuminated by the peerless sword light. It was dazzling. The mountains, rivers, void, light, everything dimmed under this sword. The 3-foot-long sword contained a body of Tao. This was Ling Xuanzi's Tao. It was the foundation of his "seeing me is like seeing the heavens." It was the persistence that he persisted after being suppressed for countless years. Retreat. In the distance, the emperors were terrified and retreated for their lives. The countless cultivators were completely intimidated. They couldn't see or hear anything. Only their minds were drowned in fear, and they were on the verge of collapse. Some people even collapsed to the ground and fainted. Everyone knew that both Lin Sun and Ling Xuanzi were serious. How could the might of the Emperor Dao that the two of them had displayed be something that anyone could observe? Boom! The energy rumbled, and the surroundings were in chaos. In the battlefield, Lin Sun moved with his fists like a great abyss, and he had the power to suppress the surroundings and devour everything. The Dao light on his body shocked the heavens. On the other hand, Ling Xuanzi held the 3-foot-long sword Qi. He was disdainful and fierce like a celestial emperor that controlled the universe, and his sword slashed through everything that stood in his way. As the two fought, a scene of great destruction and chaos appeared. It was like two sovereigns were fighting fiercely with the heavens and the earth as the pawn and the Dao as the pawn. Such a scene could absolutely be said to be rare in the world, and it was enough to shock both ancient and modern times. After all, although the two of them were fellow disciples, they were peerless emperors on the path of Tao. Such a battle was like a legend, and how many times could it be seen in the world? P.S. Let's talk about something serious. Zongheng has a year-end inventory activity. Children who read books in Zongheng can vote. Please focus your votes on the Best Author of the Year option. Remember, everyone has a free ticket every day. Just vote for the free one. Don't spend money on it. It's not worth it. No matter what the final ranking is, just have some fun. For the specific operation steps, open the Zongheng app and enter the Tianjiao book interface. There is a year-end inventory activity. Poke in, select the Best Author of the Year option, select the free ticket, and vote. Free tickets every day.